kind of like how I compared like Kanye to Apple. It's like Drake is really like, it's kind of very similar to Amazon. He's very, very similar to Amazon. It's in a point where it's like he's so good at every single facet, not at rap, but at music.
Yes. Yeah,
but it's like when you go to Drake, you remember that Drake was originally a rapper. Amazon originally started selling books, but they just started doing everything. They started branching out, experimenting a little bit, and then they figured out it worked, and then they figured out the formula.
What's cooking, everybody? We are back. We are back. We are back. We are back. We are getting Doug back. If you know, you know. Anyway, I appreciate you guys hanging in there while I was in COVID quarantine and having to take a solo pod last week, but I am back on my feet. We have a guest in studio, and on that note, I am joined in the bunker today by my friend, Mr. Tobi Mustafa. Mus is one of the co-hosts of the Faces of the Future podcast, along with Miles Matthews and Shannon Johnson, who have also both been in here. Those guys are terrific. Check out their show, Apple, Spotify, YouTube. Love what they do. Love their conversations. And I love Mus's contradictions on a lot of things. Mus is not afraid to say what he thinks, and he has beliefs that are all over the place. So I really, really appreciate that when I got a chance to sit down with him and talk with him. But today we did get to actually discuss what I had brought up talking to myself last week on the solo pod with the whole Rittenhouse case. So we got someone else's viewpoint on that. Thought that was great. And then the whole middle of the podcast was a giant, deep discussion on music and culture. And we haven't done enough of that in here, in my opinion. So it's really, really good to get that. We got really deep in the weeds, which I loved, talking about different artists, different styles within music, and ways that it's impacted everyone outside of just the music itself. And then on the back end, we discussed two things that are sad situations. The first one is Virgil Abloh, completely unexpectedly, because no one knew he was battling cancer, but Virgil Abloh, the founder of Off-White, passed away, and that happened right before we started recording. So we were recording on Sunday, a couple days before this episode, and that news was horrible. So at least we got to address it and discuss it in here, but that guy's impact is going to go far beyond where his life, unfortunately, was cut very, very short. And then on the back end, the second sad thing there was the whole Travis Scott concert fiasco. And I'm obviously a fan of Travis Scott. People have heard me talk about him before, but we hadn't discussed it here, so it was good to kind of go through it. I do have a lot of thoughts. I also think that a lot more still needs to come out as far as like who really knew ahead of time, who was being reported to, minus just the videos we see. But it's a horrible situation because people go to concerts trying to have a good time, and the idea that like people would go somewhere and die is incredibly, incredibly sad. So we did get to talk about that, not to be a downer on the end there, but really, really enjoyed this convo. Very much needed. We are back in the saddle. The pod is back with the guests. Hope you guys enjoy this one. And as always, if you're on YouTube, please subscribe. Please like the video as well. Thank you to everyone who does that. And if you are on Apple or Spotify and you are not already subscribed on Apple or following on Spotify, please hit those buttons for me. And I look forward to seeing you guys again for future episodes. That said, you know what it is. I'm Julian and Dorey, and this is TRENDIFIER. Let's go! This is one of the great questions in our culture. Where is the nuance? You're giving opinions and calling them facts. You feel me? Everyone understands this, but few seem to do it. If you don't like the status quo, start asking questions.
We all have our stories, you know what I mean? Like, Shannon obviously has a story. When he came in, he was talking about what he was talking about. His story comes from the fact, his story and what he's saying is coming from the fact that, you know, his fiance is from where she's from. It's the same thing with Miles.
She was the one, by the way, just for people, episode 53, his fiance is from Israel.
Yes.
So he was talking about, because he was in here when that was like,
yeah, I didn't want
the fan.
Yeah,
too.
I don't want to be all on his, I don't want to put all his information out there, so that's why I was being a little.
It's already out.
I mean, yeah, that's true.
I'll be the bad guy. It's already out.
Yeah, true. But it's like, I'm saying that from a sense of like, we all have, from where he's coming from, his reference point is, yo, you have a fiance that's Israeli, and everything that you're saying is not based off of the fact that like you're like, how do I say this? You're not being a dick about it. You're just saying the truth because this is what you're being told. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And so it's like, say for example, I'm just throwing this out there. Well, actually, no, I'll use this as an example. Someone like Kyle Rittenhouse, you know, when we come in.
Let's go.
When we come in and you see him on Fox News talking about, oh my gosh, if this was a black kid that did the same thing, it's like, it would be terrible. But it's like, yeah, you're right saying that, but you're saying this on Fox News, and you, as a 17-year-old kid who probably has like 40-year-old parents, understand the narrative that's being projected in that, you saying that on Fox News.
Wait, say that again. So I understand your point you're making on you can't get an unbiased news source on the second part, but you're saying he was going on and saying what about if it were a black kid?
Basically, he did.
I did not watch this interview, by the way.
I didn't watch the whole interview. I watched honestly, truly, I'll be honest with you. I did the internet thing and saw the clip, and I saw him on Fox News, and I'm just turned off by Fox News, so I just like, nah, I'm not doing it yet.
Okay.
So he said something along the lines of like, hey, like I'm happy of like how like the court case came out, like, oh my gosh, like I'm paraphrasing here, like this would be so scary if this was like someone else of like a different race or like an African American doing something similar like this, along those lines. Like I'm not.
What did he mean by that?
Basically, what he's saying is that because he got off, you know, he was found innocent, and because, you know, he was found innocent for all the stuff that happened. He's saying that if an African American male, you know, or woman came in, you know, got a gun, drove across state, and came into a protest, that they wouldn't receive the same justice that he did.
Oh, he did say that.
And yeah, but why that looks so wild to me is because of the fact that like you premeditated, everything that you did was premeditated. You bought a gun to go to a protest.
Well,
in a sense,
all right.
In a sense, I'm paraphrasing.
And I want to make sure we get it right so
Yeah.
that, you know, we can have the conversation and go through it. To be clear, and you and I did talk about this one part with the gun when we were setting up the studio, but technically, even as someone I didn't used to be this way, but I'm extremely conservative on guns now. I don't like the idea. Like, I'm not going to sit there and take an Instagram with them, but like, I'm not going to get into that. But even as someone who's of that opinion, the gun laws in Wisconsin are a little weird.
Yeah.
So the whole thing was his buddy, who actually is going to get probation and like is in court and going to have to pay a fine and shit for doing this. His buddy had an agreement with him where 6 months before this or something, he bought the gun because the buddy was 18 and said he'll hold it and then give it to Kyle when he's 18.
Yeah.
So the fact that he was still 17 and using the gun.
Yeah.
I said this in my solo podcast I had to do during COVID, when I had COVID. I was like, you can't tell me that he knew when he was going there that he wasn't breaking the law. He definitely didn't know that.
Okay, yeah, not for sure.
It was a complicated thing. So like that was another dumb decision. But technically, he didn't break any of their laws, and he had been there. He wasn't driven there by his mom that night. He had been there in Kenosha for over a day. So he was already there.
Yeah, but my thing is, it's still for me, it's still about the fact of like, you still went there premeditated. You know what I mean? And my
like to the actual event.
Yeah, that's my whole thing. It's not about like, it's more so about you premeditated. You had a premeditated thought to go over there, and for whatever reason, I don't know. I'm not. But the concept was you still went there with a gun.
He thought he was getting paid.
Probably.
That was
No, really?
Yeah.
He said he thought he was getting paid?
Yeah. They were under the impression that because all these riots have been happening over the summer in other cities and businesses had been burning, they were like, this is why I'm saying like he's not a hero at all. Another reason. He thought that people were being paid. I don't know if this was even accurate, but he thought people were being paid to go protect these businesses. So they were like, fuck it, let's go make some money and protect some businesses.
Is that what he said in court?
Yes. And people, again, everything we say on this, please fucking fact check it yourself. We're doing it live in here. That is my understanding from what I've read. I'm pretty sure I remember it correctly, but please fact check that yourself.
So
I don't know if he said it in court, but that was said at some point.
To be clear, he said that he thought that they were going to get paid defending businesses.
Yes.
And so not for nothing, the prosecution didn't question him about that, or
I think they did, but there was nothing to really question about it because the idea was that you just show up and you're there, and if shit hits the fan, you're there to do something. Whereas the argument was over because we had all three on video. All three, there were 2 killings and one guy got shot in the arm.
Yeah.
The argument was over. Okay, let's assess this and see what was happening. And when you watch the actual videos and when you listen to the testimony that was there, that is at least corroborated by video. Otherwise, eyewitness testimony can be very, very unreliable.
Yeah.
If you didn't have that. Yes, it was very clear self-defense.
Yeah.
My argument has been, okay, fine. It really shouldn't have been a case. I feel bad that, a kid had to go through that. Unfortunately, that happens sometimes. They came to the right decision. What I don't want to see happen is him canonized because it was stupid that he was there. He shouldn't have been there. There's no reason, in my opinion, for a 17-year-old to look at a situation where shit's hitting the fan. He's not even really supposed to have this gun and saying, you know what, I think I'll go down there with the gun and defend the business. What's the worst that could happen? Like, if you do that, that's a dumb decision.
Yeah, because that was going to be my next question. Like, my whole thing is that you're telling me that you went there to go defend businesses, but at what point did you see an email or a Craigslist post that said, hey, we're paying you, come down with a gun, and then you'll be paid? Like,
I don't know that this was another piece of evidence. There was some sort of post. I don't know if it talked about payment, but they confirmed that couldn't have been what he was looking at because his social media, he wasn't following them at all, didn't know anything about it. But I don't know. The answer to what you're saying is I don't know if there was like a written announcement or something, or if people were just texting him like, yo, we're getting paid to do it. I don't know what it was. That was just his impression.
And that's my thing. It's like let's be, and this is what I mean about, this is where my whole thing about stories come in. It's like you're like, the whole story is that let's go with that. So in the midst of the protest of, Jacob Blake, Ahmaud Arbery, why am I missing the last name? This is not good.
George Floyd,
thank you. In the midst of those 3 people, we had people have peaceful protests. We now saw online, which has been confirmed, where people that were not a part of the protest started inciting riots.
Correct.
People were, I'm not going to say who, people were planting bricks, doing all these different things.
Minus Portland, by the way.
Minus Portland.
They're an outlier.
Yeah.
But yes.
There were people doing those things, and at that point, we're now looking at this saying that, okay, if we saw this on the internet, a business who has insurance would now come, regardless if it's word of mouth or not. Like, the story is like, okay, businesses would come now and say, hey, we need people to come and defend our businesses. It like when you look at it, it's like when you tell the story in such a way, it's like that's so weird.
Here's how I would see it from their way, and where I'll agree. And yes, is it true that a lot of businesses have insurance? Yes. Do any of the policies, like almost any of them, cover everything, let alone the fact that you're put out of business for however long you don't even have a place? No, they don't. And it kills a lot of businesses when they burn down and shit. So that can't happen. Obviously, yes, of course, I'm always going to be like lives over businesses. I get that, but that's apples to fucking ice cream here. Like, the bottom line is there were a lot of no good people coming in who don't give a fuck about Black Lives Matter or Jacob Blake. They're just coming there to stir some shit, which, by the way, at least the first guy he shot absolutely was that on steroids.
Yeah.
And, the businesses in this one in Kenosha, they had the precedent of having seen what happened in Minneapolis, having seen this was in August, so they had seen what had happened all summer. So I fully understand if there was some paranoia there in those places, I get it, and I'm with it. Again, though, what I'm not going to get with is the idea that, like, it was a 17-year-old kid who decided he needed to go down there and be Batman. Yeah. That doesn't work.
And that's where my whole thing comes in. It's like, no matter how I look at it, it's like a 17-year-old boy, and I'm not taking out the aggression, everything, taking that out, for example, and bringing that in. It's like, this boy still came down premeditated to come and defend businesses at the age of 17. For what reason? Like, it's like, at what point do and I'm not saying this to be rude, but it's like, at what point do your parents also use common sense to now be like, it's like, all right, cool. Like, I don't think that's a good idea because I wouldn't want you to be in that space, regardless of what you know. And so for me, I'm looking at this and it's like, this whole thing happened. Someone drove you down. You stayed down there for a day, and you still at the age of 17.
I don't remember if someone. I think his mom. I think he did catch a ride with his mom, but again, it was a day before. It wasn't to this.
But my whole thing is that like that shouldn't happen. Like, you're 17, bro. Like.
Well, I mean, the driving there, there was nothing going on when she drove.
No,
there.
I'm not
that
saying,
part, I just want to make sure people are clear what you're saying.
But I'm saying in a sense of like, yo, like, even if there is a protest, why are you going out with a gun and like, I get it, but it's like, you're 17 and you went out there with a gun. Whatever intention at that point, like, you have to understand when you're in that type of situation where there's riots, there's things going on, no matter what the situation is, that intent, like, people are not thinking straight in those types of situations when people are rioting. So my thing is that, like, if I see somebody with a gun, even if I'm a peaceful protester, if I pack that thing on me, at whatever happens, if I see you with a gun, I don't know what you're going to do with that. You know what I'm saying?
There is also, so
it's like, it's weird to me. It's weird.
There's two levels to it. We've touched them a little bit, but I'm going to put it in context to give like the story. If you just looked at this, if you are someone who is right wing or left wing, and you put aside whatever you want your fairy tale ending to be here, or however you want to call it, and just look at the facts so that we can move the fuck on from this case and understand that there is some shit that it's like, all right, we don't want to ever see that again. Reasonable thing to say. The action of him, as we've covered, deciding to go there, taking the gun that he definitely didn't know the full law, so he got lucky, but that was careless. All that was dumb.
Yeah.
When dumb doesn't break the law, it's not negligence. So it's not, that is not prosecutable. So once he's there, he's already done a dumb thing.
Yep.
But technically,
he didn't break the law.
He was free to do it.
Yeah.
He didn't break the law. Once he's there, whether or not having a gun there is not a helpful thing, and I would say it's not helpful. If you are then, like, forget who you are, where you are, what the situation is, what your age is, what your race is, what your background is, your socioeconomic status, forget all that. If you are then threatened, like your life is legitimately threatened, as we have seen on video, it is crystal clear. Once these things actually happened, yes, he was in danger of dying. In fact, one person had a gun and was aiming it at him. I mean, it was, it got that bad. The other guy was hitting him with the blunt force object and coming after him and going for the gun. And the first guy was running, pinning him in cars, going for the gun.
Yeah.
If your life is threatened, you are permitted, and you have it legally right there, you are permitted and need to be permitted to defend yourself. Like, when I hear the law and it says don't kill people, that makes sense to me. It's a very simple thing.
It's very true.
If you are legitimately, and again, thank God there's video to be able to say one way or the other, because like if he had just killed people, we'd see it. If he had acted in self-defense, as it appears he did, we see it. If you are in that situation, you have to be able to defend yourself. So what we should be saying is that not a hero, dumbass kid, got lucky that none of the dumb decisions he made broke laws. But then once he was there, yes, technically he acted okay, but that's never an outcome anyone wants to see.
Yeah,
period.
No, that's true. I will say, though, I like I said, I'm not 100% versed in the law, but I'm just, what makes me, why I feel iffy about the case and the gun charge and everything like that. I'm not talking about Wisconsin, but I am thinking about the situation of now you did bring a gun into another state, and we don't know the rules of that state for guns. Because I was talking to somebody who has a gun, and he lives in either Alabama or Florida, one of those.
Oh, he's hooked up then.
Yeah, he was expressing to me like, yo, when I do want to come to Jersey, I don't fly into Jersey because I do security, and I'm like, I fly in through Philly. It's either Philly. Yeah, he says he flies in through Philly. And then he gets his gun, he does everything he needs to do, and then he drives into Jersey. And the only reason why
so he flies in with the gun to Philly.
Yeah, I believe so. I'm paraphrasing here because I don't remember the conversation 100%. But I'm using this as an example to say, like, there has to be something that expresses that with whatever gun laws, you still have to abide by those state rules. So while, Wisconsin may not have, like, rules that would have broken the law, I just find it weird that we weren't looking at it from the Kenosha what is it, Kenosha is a weird state. I don't remember what state that's in.
That's in Wisconsin.
It is in Wisconsin? Okay, yeah. So basically, it's weird because
it's on the border of Illinois and Wisconsin.
Okay, that's probably why. Yeah. So my thing is that, like, it's just weird because it's like, I guess what I'm trying to say is that I don't know if there is any laws, whether from where he came from, that would forbid him to do that, or if not,
there weren't.
And my thing is, it's just weird to me, like, because there has to be some type of restrictions or anything like that. But I don't know. Maybe there isn't. Maybe there is. Either way, it's just weird. It's just, that whole thing is just for, like I said, I just think that laws, like when you have trials like this, these things tell a story. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, going back to everything, you're telling this story of however the court case goes, is that when people look back at this in history, it's like, okay, this is the story they told and this is the situation. We're allowed to do this. Like, all law is just storytelling and people being able to act. Yeah. And you're being able to influence that story in the way that you want it to go. And so for me, looking at it, like I said, just you're telling the story. And it just, for me, just in the height of everything, when you use the context as well, it just came off very iffy, even though we understand that he didn't technically break any laws. When you look back on when the case was, it looks very iffy to me.
I agree with exactly what you said there. And again, as I even said, being someone who's very open on guns and wants very few laws there, what I will say is that I don't think that applies to people below the age of 18, and he still was below the age of 18. I think that's a dangerous, when you start saying, like, yeah, have your 11-year-old pick up a gun to just fucking do it. I'm not talking about going out and hunting a deer with a rifle. I'm talking about, like, picking up an AR-15. I think that's fucking stupid. I think it's also probably a form of bad parenting, my opinion, but that's what I think. The bottom line is, the way you just put that is probably better than I did, but that is what I was trying to say. The first half of it is all iffy. The case that he was on trial for, which was the self-defense, to me, with video, add the testimony to it, yeah, it's crystal clear. But that's it. Now let's be done with it. And that's unfortunately not how our society works, because we have the people propping him up as a hero, and then we also have the people coming in who have literally not watched a second of the case nor reviewed a single fact, who are literally spewing lies. And I hesitate to call it, for some of them, that, because I legitimately think that it's actually just carelessness in that they're not looking and they're just assuming what they're hearing on the internet is correct. So I won't sit here and say all of them are liars. I'm not going to do that. Still, though, carelessness is not an excuse to me. And it's like, if you're talking about people's lives, I don't care what the background is or what's going on. We need to treat everything with the same energy. Which is why, by the way, guys, I say it every week. I'm going to say it again. I'm going to shout it from the rooftops because it applies to all of you, and I'm just trying to help you out. But I have been getting the best sleep of my life since I started using the 8 Sleep Pod Pro cover, because the other ironic thing here is that I'm also sleeping the least amount of hours, or number of hours, I should say, that I ever have. And yet I am more rested than ever because I don't get up in the middle of the night. Maybe once. I used to get up 3-4 times minimum. That is because 8 Sleep's proprietary app has their proprietary technology that plugs right into that sucker and makes sure that I'm getting the deepest level of sleep throughout each of my quote-unquote sleep stages throughout the night. Measures things like my body temperature, my REM, and a whole bunch of other factors to make sure that happens, such that when I wake up in the morning after sleeping maybe 6 hours, I feel like I slept 8. So use the link in my description along with the code TRENDIFIER at checkout. That's TRENDIFIER. And you will get $100 off either the 8 Sleep Pod Pro cover, as I use, or the 8 Sleep Pod Pro mattress, which is double the price, does the same thing, but it's a full mattress. So if you want to get a full mattress, you can do that. I would highly recommend it. But if you want to keep your current mattress, as I did, get the cover. You'll love it. Check it out. A case that I had no previous knowledge of whatsoever, had never heard of it, had never read about it, knew nothing about it. Learned all about it last week because I was like, holy shit, this is weird timing. That Andrew Coffey case in Florida. Yeah,
that was the one where he that was the one where he shot the cops, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I went through this now a lot, and I'm like, and I feel like I have a very good understanding of the case. But to me, you know, I'll be critical on this show, and certainly a lot of guests have been too, of problems in our legal system and our justice system. And you should be. You want everything to The goal is to get things to perfect. It'll never get there, but you want to keep improving. And so, yeah, I think we do have bias problems. I think we do have issues, and it comes down to a lot of different things. It certainly comes down to race in situations. It comes down to socioeconomic status based on what you can afford for representation. So there's all these issues that certainly got to get fixed. But when I see things where it's like, all right, there's a few steps in the right direction where it's like some things are better, I'm going to point that out.
Yeah.
And this Andrew Coffey case, please look it up, everyone. But the Cliff Note version is Andrew Coffey was a convicted felon, not for overly serious shit, but it was for, ironically, it was for back when he was like 16, like battery with a law officer. He got in a fight with a police officer, which was dumb. But that was what it was for. And then he was on trial for 4 years ago. Mm-hmm. He woke up in the morning. His house was unknowing to him, being raided with a warrant by a lot of police, not for him. It was for his father, who was selling some low-level drugs. Mm-hmm. And so he saw a gun barrel in his window.
And he shot back.
And he grabbed the gun, which I don't give a fuck who you are. I'll be conservative. 90% of people in the same situation would do the same thing, and they have a right to. And so when he did, I think he killed a couple cops. I still got to go check that. I forget if it was one or two. Either way, he killed police officers, unknowing that they were police officers. Florida, red state, killing cops, convicted felon, black guy. Like this is a legal system special, right?
Yeah.
The jury, who I think was a mostly white jury too, looked at it and went, "No, we're sorry they died. It wasn't really the cops were executing a warrant. Well, we'll figure out how the legality of that, but they were doing their job. It's not their fault in a way, but." Yeah, this guy had a right to do that.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay. The same day that a lot of people were still making this Kyle Rittenhouse thing to be a race thing, like real quick on that, and I actually want your thoughts on that too. Mm-hmm. That pissed me off so much because this was a case about a white kid who shot 3 white people in protecting a fucking business from, at that point, what were rioters out there that had nothing. They don't represent what people who want to represent quote-unquote Black Lives Matter are trying to progress. These were just idiots out there fucking causing anarchy.
Yeah.
And yet we made it this white supremacy thing. The place where they do tie that in, where it's like, okay, I understand at least where you're coming from, is that if this were a black guy who'd done the same thing, he'd be in jail forever and no one would care. Maybe. Mm-hmm. And historically, I might not even disagree. 2 things, though. Number one, just because that might be true, and it is totally unfair, that doesn't mean that because it'd be true there, you find someone else guilty just to be even. That's never the answer, right? Even if it's a white guy, that's not the answer.
I get what you're saying.
The second reason is, though, the same day we saw, and it's one case. We are, to be clear, we are cherry picking one case here in both directions, but we're cherry picking. We saw a case where there was a black man who also happened to be a convicted felon with felonies against the cops, technically, who shot cops in a red state.
Yeah.
And a jury looked at it and said, unfortunate, but yes, self-defense. It's what it is. And so I'm like, I don't know if that would have happened 5 years ago. And that makes me at least go, okay, there's a couple things going right. And then, look, you saw a slam dunk one a few days. I mean, thank God it was a slam dunk. But we saw that Georgia jury deliberate for, I mean, I think it was like 8 hours or something to come back with 27 charges, most of which were guilty on the Arbery thing. So it's like, hey, man, like even in some of the stereotype states and everything and issues where it's like, oh, are they gonna treat this right? You know, a black man being killed in broad daylight? They did. And it's like, okay, these are some positive steps. And I do want to be positive when I see that.
I'll say about the Ahmaud Arbery case, I will say, I think the best way to put it is, I'll say that I am one of those people that are very skeptical about if the pandemic wasn't around and the same thing happened, if we would still get the same result. Because like I said, when we look at it and we look at what was presented to us, we had somebody running, he was being chased, and he got hunted down and killed as if we are we're in 1955. Mm-hmm. And my thing is that while, yeah, you're 100% right, this is a step in a positive direction. But I always seem to question, would this be a step, would you guys still make this step if the pandemic wasn't around and we were all not sitting at home? Because my thing is that we look at the George Floyd, we look at what happened with Derek Chauvin.
It's very
you know
fair.
what I mean? It's like this shit happens all the time. This shit has happened with a lot of other people. You know what I mean? But the thing is that we weren't all at home sitting being forced to look at this to understand that, yo, this is some bullshit. And so now because we were forced to look at it, it's almost like, how do I say this? Even though we know that juries shouldn't be biased, it's like you still have a bit of bias in a sense where it's like, yo, you know what's going on right now. Whether or not you try to ignore it or not, there's always going to be a bias. And the reason why I say that real quick before, it's like when you look at juries, right? What a lot of people don't understand about juries is that they pick, obviously the prosecution and defense pick certain people. I'll use this for example. I forgot who explained this to me, but it made perfect sense. It's like when a woman gets raped, right? Mm-hmm. To be graphic, sorry about that. What they'll do is they'll try as much as possible for the jury to try to stay away from women. I could be wrong on this. If anybody's a lawyer,
no,
correct
I believe
me.
that's correct.
Yeah, they try to stay away from women.
Strategy.
Yeah, they try to stay away from women.
Mm-hmm.
They make the woman, the woman who was a victim, they make her dress as conservatively as possible. They have her hair tied up. They make her wear glasses. She doesn't wear any type of revealing clothing, long skirt, everything.
The prosecution does that.
Yeah, the prosecution. Yeah, the prosecution. So that's how when they go up there and they look at her, what happens is that you put her in a position where it's like, okay, well, this is the first time we're seeing her, and she looks like this type of person. A lot of times that happens is that now if she were to come in dressing if she was going out on a Saturday night, it's like, yo, not for nothing, even though we say that this is the wrong thing to do, a lot of people will think this, yo, like, you dress like this, that, and the third, you out, you drinking with your girls, you dancing on everybody. I'm not saying she deserved it, but she didn't put herself in the best position. I'm not saying that's my opinion, but I'm just saying a lot of people think that way, and a lot of people will have that thought but won't say it because obviously at the end of the day, it's still on the person that still sexually assaulted that woman. Yes. But what a lot of people will say, oh yeah, that's her fault for putting herself in that position. But the idea of what I'm saying is that what happens with juries is that juries still have some type of bias in how they look at people. Everybody has some type of bias because their reference point is different.
And you're also saying how they're built, though, like on purpose to build in the bias.
Yeah,
right?
and that's the second point as well. It's like when you go into court, it's like that jury is built in, so it's supposed to be neutral. Or what I'll say this is that the bias is neutral. So that's how it's like if you have 6 women and 6 men, right? These men are all majority Hispanic. They're all fathers. This, that, and the third. You have women, say some may be mothers, some may be single. The bias is even because now you have fathers on there who know, damn, I don't give a fuck what happens. No one's about to go rape my daughter versus some of the single women and some of the mothers who are like, well, I don't want my daughter dressing like this, or I don't want my daughter like this, or the single girls who are like, well, she shouldn't be dressed like that. She may, even though she didn't ask for it, I don't want her putting herself in that position to do X, Y, and Z. So now the bias becomes even. So now when they go to the court and they give you the unbiased opinion, it's like, well, you're not using your bias to make that decision. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Even though whether or not people really think about it. So, I mean, it's interesting in jury deliberations and things of that nature. And that's part of the reason why I'm saying what I'm saying. When we look at these things, the jury knew what was going on. Like in the height of racial tension, we watched a man get executed. You know what I mean?
And they try, by the way, and I'll just say this, which is kind of ridiculous when you think about modern day culture. They also try to work in that they get people who are blissfully, and they might be lying about it, who are blissfully unaware of what had happened or never saw the video or something, which is like, that's still crazy to me. Like, do you ever sit back and think about like how wild that system is? Yeah. And it's actually amazing in a way because setting up the jury, even though we're pointing out all these places where it could be taken advantage of or like cooked by experts and stuff like that, certainly gonna have flaws. But you set up people who are just regular Joes who live in your town or live in a city, whatever. They're not in the government. It's not like you have this all-powerful body who can do unabated whatever they want. But like you get these 12 random people in there who last week, before they were listening to this trial about 12 killings or 12 homicides, last week they were cooking dinner for their kids or they were going to their 9 to 5. And now they're sitting in there listening intently for 2, 3, 4 weeks at a time, sometimes 2, 3 months if a trial's insane. Yeah. And then they go back into a room and they deliberate your ability to be free or not at any point for the rest of your life. Come back, sit down in the seats, look at you when they hand a paper to a judge, knowing they just sealed your fate or freed you and watch you as you react to the fact of whether or not you are going to be considered a criminal for the rest of your life and live in a jail cell, or you're going to walk the fuck out of the courtroom that day because you've been found innocent by your peers. That is fucking insane to me.
It's definitely insane. And that's why I think it's like, it's always important when we think about that. It's like, you always have to, I don't know what they ask in jury duty because I've never been asked to do it, knock on wood. But it's just one of those things where I just think that, yeah, I understand there are just some things to me where I just feel like, yeah, you should go to jail. I also believe that in some cases, people do deserve second chances. I will say that in terms of America, I would say that when we talk about these things, when we make people criminals, I just think that the biggest issue about it is that you're right that this stuff is wild. But the only reason why it's wild is because these people go and become criminals, and then there's no way to essentially bring them back into society in a healthy way. Yeah. I forgot what country it was. It might have been Australia or some European country. When you go to jail,
it's Europe. It's not Australia.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay.
These are always cited. It's like they'll cite. I'm just remembering what I hear. Mm-hmm. They'll always cite like Sweden, Norway, some of those states.
So I was going to say it's like some of these states, some of these countries, they'll have you like you're basically rehabbing in a sense, not in a sense of like, oh my gosh, you're just in a jail cell doing nothing. Like they're trying to make you become a better functioning member of society. Right. And my problem with I'll say the incarceration system has been just that, because it's like we just throw these people in there and it's like, well, we're throwing you on parole. I mean, or you're a felon now. It's going to be hard for you to get a job or a good paying job. And it's like, we all know what happens when you're poor. You know, you can't really afford things and you're in a place where, you know, it's not the best. You tend to go back to your vomit. And what happens with that is you kind of stay in the system. Yep. And going back and like what the biggest issue is that someone like for myself is like why that becomes an issue is because a lot of times people like me get that shit unnecessarily just because we don't look like people that look like Julian. And I'm not saying that in a bad way, but it's like,
no, I know what you're saying.
And it's like, and that's why that becomes such an issue when we talk about things like the jury, because it's like, you have to understand that it's like, I'm not even saying not for nothing. Like we built this country on racism, like discrimination. We built this country in a sense where people like me were never really, in a sense, supposed to be free in a sense. So when we look at these situations, we now come back, and this has been the mindset of a lot of people who have started their ancestors here. So now these people who are descendants of, just hypothetically speaking, a Grand Dragon Master, whatever they're called in the Ku Klux Klan, or some white supremacists that are in Princeton, New Jersey, they come now and a black man like me is on for a felony charge, say for weed, like 2-3 years ago. They're like, well, they're not going to say it out loud, but it's like, well, he was probably doing something else. Like he needs to be in jail. It's a bias. Yeah. And so why that becomes so important is going back to this case. It's like we're saying that, oh yeah, you wanted to make sure people didn't see the video, but I think that bias is important because it's like it shows one what the fuck a lot of people have been talking about for a minute. And so now when you leave people alone in their own biases, this shit fucks up a lot of people. You know what I mean? And it's like, and that's why I said, like, going back to this whole thing, it's like I'm really glad that they went to jail, but it's like it's a step in the right direction, yes. But what we also need to do is, once again, it's about storytelling. We have to tell us, like, what happened to Ahmaud Arbery. Who
tells the story?
Yeah, it's what happened to Ahmaud Arbery, what happened to George Floyd, what happened to Alton Stone, what happened to all these people is that we were telling a story about, the biases that we've had for this many years have fucked us up. Straight like that. Right. It's put us in positions where we've been killed. It's put us in positions where we don't get the fair share of the pie that they tell us that we have to pick ourselves up by the bootstraps and work for. And so now when we have these cases and we have this step in the right direction, I'm happy about it. But like I said, I always question whether or not, if we didn't have that bias of that video, take that video out.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Take the fact that we were in a pandemic out.
Well, actually, your point's even better taken because this wasn't a case until the video was released.
Yeah, and that's my thing. And it's like, we have that, and it's like, that's the whole thing. The bias wasn't there. We all sat home where, he was probably black. He had counterfeit money. It's like a counterfeit $20 bill results in you doing that. It's not worth a life. And that's the biggest thing that we have to understand. It's like, with laws, you're telling a story. It's the same thing with Julius Jones. Like, the whole story. Like the whole story wasn't even told.
Can you tell people what that case was?
Julius,
I talked about that last week on my solo pod, but I'm glad you brought that up.
Julius Jones, correct me if I'm wrong. Well, Julius Jones was on death. He was going to get executed.
As of like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, as of 2 weeks ago. And I also have a problem with this. Kim Kardashian had tweeted about it, and J. Cole had responded to the tweet as well. And a lot of people responded, case, and then they signed a petition. And I think the governor of that state, I forgot what state it was, Oklahoma now came in, and now he just said he's not getting executed, but he still has life in prison.
He tried to make it, and he's wrong. He's just trying to win political points. He tried to give them what they wanted while also fucking them and saying, you can never fight this, which, fortunately, Governor Stitt, if there is evidence that can be presented in court, there are other systems in place that people will find a way to get that into court. So that's not going to work. But he tried to be like the fuck it, you're gonna rot in prison. I'm giving you what you want. Get the fuck off my lawn. So I look, I appreciate him for at least not letting the guy die, because now we will never, if that had happened, we would never be able to decide if he's innocent or not. And again, as I said last week, I feel pretty good that he's innocent. I'm not 100%. There's certainly some questions there. I'm about 80, 90%. I think I said 90 last week. I'm in that 80, 90%. But I am all about, like, if we found out 10 years from now, irrefutable evidence, he was guilty, I'm still happy that we go through the process to make sure we get it right.
Yeah, no, I definitely would. I definitely appreciate that. I just look at it, and just from some of the stuff that I did read, I saw that during the case, his parents and his family was not up to be called to the witness stand. Apparently, the guy who was supposed to be written off as the getaway driver, apparently he admitted to like 3 people that he killed the guy, 3 different people that don't know each other. And I just find that really interesting. He
also slept over at his house after the murder.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's wild. I didn't read that.
Yeah. So the 3 things they had him on, and this is what people try to write off in a quick tweet to say he's got to be guilty. Fuck you. You know, because it got political. It was everyone showed their ass. But they had the murder weapon, the gun, wrapped in a red bandana, and the eyewitness had said, I saw a black man in a red bandana shoot, I think it was the sister, shoot my brother. And so it was in his house, and so of course the red bandana was his. It had his DNA on it. And as I said, I'm like, there's a few people in this country that own a red bandana. One of the many pieces of evidence is, don't you think if you just killed a guy and you were trying to make sure you got framed for it, if you went and fucking stayed over at his house that night, you don't think you could grab his red bandana and stick the gun in the goddamn drawer wherever it was and then be like, oh my God, look, cops, it's all here. Come on.
Yeah.
Like, it offends, cases like that offend my intelligence.
Yeah.
And I understand the Innocence Project is trying to argue the DNA match. I get why they're doing that. Frankly, as far as like the match on that, I'm on the prosecution side because it does pretty much match. But that might not be relevant.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree.
You know, so like this case, and this is something where it's like, all right, well, at least we got him off death's door, so now we can focus on trying to get to the truth here. But like, it's another example of like some of the same people who are out here taking offense to the idea that poor Kyle Rittenhouse was being put through a trial he should have never been on, which maybe given the video evidence, I'll agree with that, but his life was threatened and they're so upset by that. And then this guy has a case who's going to be killed. There's no coming back. And they're like, murder weapon, DNA on the thing, eyewitness testimony, what more do you need? Fry him. It's like, dude, what?
Because people don't, people don't have sympathy for people that don't look like each other. It's like, it's
I hate to say that, but in this situation, it's hard not to.
That's just the reality of the situation. It's just it's a psychology thing. We're all comfortable with people that look like us or people that we grew up in similar environments, you know. And it's one of those things. It's statistics show it as well. It's just that when, I don't know if the guy was white or not, the guy that got killed.
He was.
Okay, yeah. So, all right, I'm right on this. So
the DA was also fucked up.
Sounds about right. But it's like
Oklahoma.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like when you have a situation where you have a black man killing a white man, he gets more time in jail than if a white man kills a black man. And it's like, it's so weird because it's like you're doing the same thing, but because we don't look alike, someone that looks like me is going to get a larger sentence because you're scared that it could be someone that looks like you. And it's just really interesting because it's like how we value things, how do I say this? How we value and how we, I guess the weight of the seriousness of certain things all really depend on whether or not if we look like someone or not. And I guess what I'm trying to say is that, like, if you're black and you do something, it's like, okay, not for nothing, people don't care about African American crime. It's because it's not in their neighborhood. It's not in a situation where it's like, okay, these people look like us. When we had the crack epidemic in the 60s, 70s, whenever it was, people didn't really
80s, 90s,
90s. People didn't really care about that. Now opioid epidemics is this whole big thing, and it's like, I'm not saying that it's not an issue, but what I'm saying is that I find it very ironic that now opioids are this big thing that people have an issue with, but when we were screaming about crack is killing the communities, nobody had anything to say.
And here's the other problem too. This has to be said.
Yeah.
The government was, I mean, I'll say it's proven. You look at some I'm talking about like the agencies. There was complicity in that, and so they had an incentive to make sure.
It wasn't complicit. It wasn't complicit. It was they did that shit.
Yeah,
worth of 50 Cent. Whatever he did, they did that shit. Like for real. Like, and it's an unfortunate thing, man. Like it's just it's really unfortunate. But it's life, man.
You made it when you were going through the full explanation a few minutes ago. Mm-hmm. You were talking about like the country and being built on racism and stuff like that. And I love that we talk about this stuff all the time on this show, because I like to bring everything into the open, especially stuff where the bickering pisses me off because it's dividing us and it's fucking insane and the extremes are out there. So like, you know, I'm one, and I said this on something else, but just as like a broad statement, I'm one of these guys that recognizes like, yeah, there's a lot of shit that was never right, period, and like has to continue to be fixed, and we must talk about it, and we have to be able to understand another person's experience, especially someone who doesn't look like you, and that works in every direction. But like if we're going to talk about like justice system things and stuff like that, you're right. Like statistically speaking, someone that looks like you versus someone that looks like me, I'm in a little bit of an advantage strictly by how I look, which, you know, that's a problem. Where I start to get more, not defensive, but like, let's be careful what we do here is that, yes, I do agree that certain unknown attitudes absolutely can be passed down, even unknowingly, to some people who have the right intentions and don't realize that some things are hardwired that shouldn't be hardwired in them from like biological, evolutionary, whatever. But when we start going to, and I'm just cherry picking the example you used, like, you know, my great grandfather, and there are some people like this, by the way, was the fucking whatever it is of the Ku Klux Klan and shit like that. And so therefore then I automatically have all this shit built in. I think one of the problems we have is now we overgeneralize to where everyone is a part of this, you know, racist history and everything. And I'm not discrediting or discounting the fact that, like, especially like, look after slavery and you look from 1865 definitely through the 1960s, and you look at all the different programs generationally that were put into place to put certain people behind the 8 ball that we still see the effects of these days. I don't argue that. But what I'm saying is we need to also recognize that we now have a lot of people who at least are, who look like me, who are incredibly aware of that. And we also have a lot of people who quote unquote look like me, who emanate from countries that aren't even white, and we call them white. You know, like when did we start calling Greek people white? When did we start calling Jewish people white? You know what I mean? Like it gets this crazy us versus you mentality. And so what I try to do is bring that back in and say, okay, let's recognize the issues. Let's put all those on the table. And let's not go too far and try to say everyone has this or everyone's biased like this. The system is fucked. Burn it all down. No, let's burn down the parts that actually can be rebuilt more beautifully. Let's not burn them down. Let's tear them down with a nice demolition and create a great big building. And it'll take time, but let's do it that way. So I wanted to make sure I said that to kind of readdress that and see what you thought there.
But how do you burn down bits and pieces? How do you burn down bits and pieces of a tree without it catching on fire fully? Like the reality.
That's why I'm saying use a demolition of a building. That was a better example.
Okay, I mean, all right. But I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is that, like, you have a point. You have a point where there are times where we do overgeneralize a lot of different things. But I think that one of those things is, and that was what I was going to talk about later on, like some more fun topics, is like it's a marketing thing. Like when you go around the world, the projection of what we look at and what we look like, or how we act and how we are, is very, very stereotypical of what people would think a lot of us are. And for example, if I go to a European country, if I even go to China, because this is a real life example that happened to a friend of mine. I'm not going to express like what he was doing, but he was there in China. A couple of his buddies, he was doing something. They literally told him he couldn't come in, and ideally, really was just because he was black. And me looking at this situation, it's like when people see African Americans in a different country, they think a lot of the things that they see from, say, American TV, or they see a lot of the things that they see off of comic books or stereotypes that have been projected. And why that becomes such an issue of why it isn't us versus me mentality is because now it goes back to the concept of this stuff has been projected in your mind, bits and pieces, time after time after time.
I don't disagree with that, by the way. I understand that.
Yeah. So it's like what happens with that is now, even though, say, somebody in Greece may not be the white supremacist that ruined everything, you're still influenced by the bias that was projected from whatever you saw. Or
from the fact that people at least don't, say you come to America, people don't categorize you the same for the wrong reasons, like the bad people, versus how they would categorize you coming to it. Okay.
So it's like if you're Greek and you come to America, you look white. And it's not a bad way.
I know what you mean.
Yeah, it's like you look white. So it's like when we see you as a white person, you came from Greece, but it's like, he's white, and it's like you automatically, once you jump into the system, it's like you're white and you're being treated as such. If I come from Africa or I come from Nigeria, I'm input into the system. They don't give a fuck if I'm Nigerian to an extent, and then you treat me the same way that you treat the guy who has ancestors that were drawn here. And it sucks because it's like a lot of times it's like you've talked to me, Miles and Shan, like from what you would see on old TV, we're nothing like that. And I specifically say old TV because what you start to realize is that breaking down all the stuff that has happened to people, you know what I mean? Like people, African Americans, what you start to understand is that when you actually understand fundamentally why certain things are happening, it makes a lot of sense. It's like when we look at, okay, why do all black people live in poor communities? It's like, well, you have to understand that in a lot of major cities, the larger the population, the more segregated it's going to get. That's just natural statistics. When you come to a situation where we talk about redlining, we talk about all the different things that have happened in the country, it's like we're built in a system to make us look poor. Like, and it comes to a situation where now it's you have the, let me not even go there, but you just have a lot of things in media where it's like you're projecting a certain image of how people are. And you know that America is the media capital of the world. So when all that stuff goes across the world, not everybody's going to come to America. Not everybody's going to come here. And everybody's just going to see, oh, shoot, there's this black guy on TV that I saw. He has his pants hanging low. He probably has a gun. So if I decide, even if I want to go to fucking Sweden or Spain, if I'm wearing like linen pants, they're still going to assume I have a gun. They're still going to assume that I'm some type of criminal or some type of person that's going to do harm. And that's why it's like, it's very important for us to understand that, like, you're 100% correct in a sense of like, yo, we need to destroy a building and rebuild it back up beautifully. But for me, the way that you have to look at it is that in order for you to, it's like one of those situations where it's like you have a building right here, but you also have to understand that there's still plumbing that you probably still gonna have to destroy in that building. There's still other stuff that you have to create. You have to create additional tunnels to build that system to where you want that building to be the most beautiful building that you want, i.e. you want the most beautiful society in which we all have been able to assimilate towards each other and not have any of these biases. So it's like, I get what you're saying, but we also have to remember that it's like all these things are all linked to one another to the point where it's like, even if you don't want to take down the good parts, some of that good stuff is going to have to come down. And
that's where it gets dangerous. And we could go down a rabbit hole of like picking out, well, what would come down? I don't think anyone knows that. And I understand. I don't want people ever taking the end of that out of context. I understand exactly what you mean. And the intention behind that is all good, because the overall point you're making ties back to the evolution. I won't even say evolutionary, the programmed groupthink attitudes that get built in based on what society pushes, not just like in our face, but passively in our ears, just every day, that gets repeated. And because of especially the interconnectivity of the world, there is that added to it. And then even put on top of that, the fact that evolutionarily, as you pointed out a while ago, yes, I recognize when I look at a black person, you look different than me. I recognize when I look at a Greek person. Maybe it's like lesser, but like they look different than me, right? Yeah. We as humans, we do have a built-in thing that says that. But I don't know if you ever just like sit back and just like laugh at some shit, but it's just like the whole thing is this, like when you actually just stop and get rid of all the noise and just think about what we're talking about, it is the stupidest fucking thing I've ever heard in my life. If you have an animal, as humans, we are an animal. Mm-hmm. I think I said that. I had a good thing with that last time where I was like trying to get the point out, and I remember I was laughing my ass off, and I don't know how you kept a straight face, but anyway, like we're this like animal kingdom object, like creature. Yeah. We are all the same. Yep. We happen to emanate from different points with respect to the literal equator, which just has to do with where the sun is. Mm-hmm. This is how simple this is. And yet, for some reason, since the beginning of time, we've built in this thing where because the sun affects different people on the outside of their organs, which affect their actual body and what they can do and how they have fucking 4 limbs, provided they're a fully limbed person. We want to be very respectful here, but they have all those things. We have ignored that part of it and just decided, like, however the outside of each of our cookies is baked, that's going to be the basis on how we judge the social standing of someone else. That is dumb.
Yeah, it's wild
to say the least.
I could be wrong. We could look this up. There's a book called The Color of Law that I have not been able to read yet. And it basically expresses why race has become a construct. And ideally, this is from Janet Yellen. That was the brown-eyed, blue-eyed experiment lady.
Wait, no. That was
not Janet Yellen. No,
Jane Elliott.
Jane Elliott. Yo, look at me, bro.
Yeah, don't give me the Janet Yellen thing.
My bad.
I'll put you in your place on that one.
No. I don't want to talk about Janet Yellen today. She's annoying. But point is that like the Jane Elliott was the blue-eyed, brown-eyed experiment, and she basically brought up the book that expressed that like, ideally, race wasn't really a construct until people couldn't really decipher certain religions from each other. So it was like a weird thing where it was like, okay, I can't tell if you're, I'm just throwing this out there, like agnostic or you're Pentecostal, whatever. I'm just using this as an example. So we're gonna distinguish you by color, and that's how apparently color started. I haven't read the book. I'm paraphrasing the very, very small that I've heard, but I think that it's very interesting to say because it's like, something as minuscule as me just being able to be under the sun longer has now essentially ruined generations of other people. It's just weird, bro. This shit is fucking stupid, bro. It is stupid. It's fucking stupid.
But we gotta talk about it because the stupidity is built in.
Yeah, and that's the craziest thing. And it's like what I find so funny about it is that like I've said this before. I probably have said this here. It's just like, as crazy as people discriminate against African Americans and other minorities, it's just very ironic because a lot of these minorities essentially have created what we've wanted in society, which is entertainment. When we look at things like music, when we look at things like acting, when we look at all these different things, a lot of the culture that we have now, or a lot of the pop culture we have now has been essentially on the foundation of what these minorities do. And I'm saying all minorities because it's like we have talented Spanish people, black people, Asian people, all of that. But when we look into things like, say, music, when we say sports, all those things, that's built on the backs of African Americans primarily. And it's just very unfortunate that it's like we've only been, I guess, reduced to that. You know what I mean?
Yes, I know exactly what you mean.
It's unfortunate, and it's like we're not really being told or shown our true value unless we're a Muhammad Ali or we're a Kanye West or we're a Jay-Z, where you're in these rooms with, I don't want to say larger than life, but these super big execs who can basically influence what you watch on TV. And they say, you know what? I like him. I like Kanye. I like how Jay-Z thinks. I like this. And it's like, it's just really unfortunate that the only time we get the acknowledgement of how we build culture is only when we only have as much money as the people that can control the rest of our lives.
Unfortunately, that's deadly accurate.
Yeah. Sorry about yeah.
No, it is. And you bring up Kanye, who you and I were talking about this. Mm-hmm. He just did, and you know, he does some stuff once in a while, and you really get a thought process into him. And I'm a huge fan of him, and I've talked about him on the show before. Mm-hmm. He's like to me, he's crazy, but he's also a genius, and he's crazy, and he says what he thinks, whether you like it or not. And there's like, from a cultural standpoint, he's just, to me, a critical person. You have to critically analyze everything he says, because sometimes he'll be like, wait, what the fuck did you just say? But so you never take anyone for law with what they say, but so often he just comes to these wild but holy shit conclusions where I'm like, damn. And so we had been talking about the one he just did, sitting down with NORE, who used to be called Noriega, who's got, I guess that's a podcast, right? I watched it on YouTube.
Yeah, Drink Champs. Yeah, okay. They consider it a podcast.
Yeah, it was good. I thought they did a good job, and it's a different model. They have like a live crowd there while they're just sitting down shooting the shit. But for people that haven't seen that, he sat down with them for over 3 hours, and god damn, I mean, I don't know what you thought, but it was like there was this element of him just, of course, saying whatever the fuck he wants because he's Kanye, but also putting all these different opposing beliefs for different things, boom, 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 right next to each other, where the audience, who you have to assume each of those individual people, by and large, is just someone who's one way or the other at this point. They're all sitting there like they're the same person, just like, wait, wow, okay, let me process all this. And technically, all the guy's doing is just thinking for himself a little bit and putting ideas out there for people to argue. Mm-hmm. And yet, I step back and go, holy shit, is that important these days?
Yeah.
Low bar.
It's
yeah. The mic a little bit.
Oh, yeah. It's really, like, Kanye's a very interesting person. I think that for me, I used to, how do I say this? Because actually, I'll just say it now. He's a really interesting person. I'll say the interview was really interesting to me because from what I did watch, a lot of stuff that he was saying was making a lot of sense. It's like, I think the concept of him just living in his bag, and that's what he considers his home, was really interesting, because it's like, we look at things as like, yo, we have this 5-6 bedroom house and this is where I live, but it's like, it's not necessarily where you live. It's like, I mean, it sounds corny, but to me, it's like home is where the heart is. It's like, you don't need the 6-bedroom house to say this is my home. Like, you literally could be in an apartment or you could be in a hotel and be like, this is my home because I have the stuff that makes me feel like me. And I think that's the concept of just homes in general. Like, home, when you go home, it's the place where you can be yourself. That's what you need. And that's just what life is. It's like, we've placed so much emphasis on material things to make us feel this way, but it's like, what about the stuff that just makes you feel like who you are? Like, art makes me feel like who I am. Me looking at things that have to do with law, me just looking at just life just makes me feel like who I am. I love taking pictures. I love art. I love writing. I love doing these things. Those make me feel like Mus. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, Kanye breaking that down is like, well, I have my MacBook, I have my external hard drive, all this stuff. This is what I need. And that's just a beautiful thing. And I think what was also beautiful about this is just, this is where I go back to the whole concept of interdependence, where it's like, yo, I just stayed at my homie's crib in Chicago for a couple of days while I'm doing this. And it's like, this is where you start to, where you're not really paying attention. He has the big messages and stuff like that, but it's the little things with Kanye sometimes.
Wait, what was that message?
He was saying that, yo, I don't have a house. I didn't stay at a hotel. I just stayed at my homie's crib in Chicago for a couple of days. I forgot what he said he was doing, but he was
yeah.
Yeah.
And he's a billionaire.
Yeah, and he's a billionaire.
Yep.
And it's like, yo, he has all the money in the world. He could stay wherever he wants. He could buy whatever house he wants, but he's like, yo, I'm just going to go stay with my homie.
Right.
And it's like, why that's so profound to me, it becomes like, it goes back to this whole thing of like, when you're not really thinking about it this way, it's like, oh, that's funny. But it's like, think about it. We live in a situation now where everybody wants to be individuals. Everybody wants to be by themselves. Everybody's emotionally unavailable. Everybody wants to be secluded. excuse me, everybody wants to be this type of individualistic person, but once again, like I said earlier, that's not how society works. You don't get to win. You don't win in society by just being by yourself. Like Steve Jobs couldn't be Steve Jobs without Steve Wozniak. You know what I'm saying? Is it Steve Wozniak? Yeah. Wozniak, yes. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And it's like we have these different profound things. Oh yeah, I can do this by myself. I'm an independent millionaire. I'm this, but Kanye couldn't get where he was without Hov or Dame, especially Dame. He couldn't get to where he is. And it's like we look at this situation as like all these people that even are on your wall right now couldn't get to where they were going to be without interdependence. And it's like now let's not even say Kanye was a billionaire. If Kanye wasn't a billionaire, he had $0. And the fact that he could stay at his homie's crib shows that you still need people at certain points in your life. And I think that that's one of the biggest things that, I mean, from what I was seeing, because I honestly don't remember because I watched it like 3 weeks ago. But like that was one of the biggest things that like I took. I'm like, yo, like this dude is a billionaire. He can buy whatever he wants. He could buy whatever house whenever he wants, literally on the spot. And all he said was, yo, I'm just relying on my homies a little bit more than normal. And this is what I want to do. And it's cool. And I think that we could all take a little piece of that and just say, listen, there are people that you're going to need in life. You can't be strong, independent, and not need nobody. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And that's just, and I think that's one of the most profound things that I saw on that, outside of him coming crazy at Big Sean and John Legend, and everyone else. It was just, yeah, it's just interesting.
The point you had made before that, talking about the guys who get to the table, the fact of the matter is they're getting there because they have the money that they were able to get. And there's a few of them who have been able to do it and they pull it off. Mm-hmm. I said it's true because I think the evidence is crystal clear on that. Mm-hmm. So I agree. But with him, I think that the fact however it happened, and it happened through him just basically being a guy who defined culture across two critical things, music and fashion, right? Mm-hmm. However he got there, great. He's there. We'll look at that later. But now that he's continuing not only to openly influence in those critical segments, mm-hmm. but he tells you exactly how he's going to do it. Even if it's something where he's like, I'm going to make people who hate this thing right now like this thing. Yep. Watch me go do it. When you add that demonstrated power where he says, like, I'm going to do it, and you're going to watch me, and we're going to sit here 6 months from now, and it's done, to the fact that he is then also someone who will come out and give his constructs, like the one you just pointed out, and make people think about things differently and want to because he's the one saying it, and he's Kanye West, and he has this platform, he has this power, he has this influence. You now are opening up the possibility that more people unknowingly are going to unplug from the machine by listening to someone like that, even if they don't agree with everything he says, which is actually healthy. I certainly don't. But like, they'll hear that and then form their own ideas and now actually be the thing that breaks the matrix. So like something he said, like he's a conundrum in a lot of ways to me because usually I can't stand people who fucking say what they are or like brag about themselves and stuff. I think he does it for a lot of comedic effect and I laugh my ass off at it. Normally something that he said back in 2013, I think maybe for the first time then, but was starting to say on The Breakfast Club, normally something like this would have made me go, click, shut it off, fuck that guy. But it had the opposite effect, and that was where he was going on and on for like 10 minutes, and he's like, I look at myself, I'm Steve Jobs. I am not, I forget the musician he used, but he used some sort of example. He goes, no disrespect, but like, I'm more like this, and this is why. And then he tied that point into, through a whole bunch of things, to the fact that, and it was funny, but you think about it, it was also real. He's like, no one gives a fuck what Barack and Michelle are wearing. Like a few people do on Twitter, but he goes, Kim and me go wear something, everyone's rocking that shit the next week. And he's like, so what's more important? And some people might look at that and be like, well, fuck you. You're talking about fashion versus like politics that actually affects laws. No, he's talking about who has attention for ideas that other people are going to suddenly be able to think about and decide that, hey, maybe we will fuck with that or we won't. And he's like, we've lived in this world where the politicians and the governments and the powerful few, which they've certainly continued to do this big time in a bad way in COVID, take power and they take ideology and they take us all and say, no, this is what you're going to do. You don't like you don't like you. That's how it goes. And by the way, run along and play. We're going to take care of things. And now we have platforms where people who are totally outside that system but have thoughts that can affect it, like a Kanye, like a Jay-Z, something like that, can use that platform, talk about it, and unplug everyone from that machine I talked about and change things in the process of just changing fucking pop culture.
Yeah. So, based off of that, do you think that he accomplished that with Donda?
No. Actually, okay. I'll say no right away.
Okay.
Because, and this is important.
Do you think Donda was good?
Yes.
Okay.
I love Donda.
Okay.
But it's an album. It's one album. Mm-hmm. And I think when we start to say like let's compare it to anything, like a piece of art, right? Because that's what it is. It's an art. I think when we start to say that one thing that this great person created is the definition of who they are and every single thing they stand for in like an entertainment art form, which any piece of art has an element of entertainment to it. I think that's like, all right, slow down. You're taking shit too far. But I'm curious why you asked that, by the way.
Because I didn't think Donda was a good Kanye album, and I don't think that that's Kanye's album.
What do you mean you don't think it's his album?
I don't think so. This is what I was trying to explain to Miles and Shan, but I didn't think I like expressed this the best way. I think that Kanye, in terms of music, is losing what made him special.
How so?
When we look at all the music, all the albums that he's made, produced, things of that nature, what made Kanye so special and so great was the innovation of what he was trying to do, right?
With the sound.
Yes, with the sound, okay. With the albums, raps, everything, right?
Okay.
And when we continue to look at that, that's what made me feel so great about Kanye, where it's like you're doing something different and you were being different. Miles calls me a Kanye stan because of just how I loved Kanye so much, because of he dared to be different and he was so comfortable being different, and he ended up being right about him being different, yes. Right? And so for me now, looking at it, it's like I look at Donda, I look at your Jesus is King, I look at your Sunday service and everything, and I'm like, bro, you lost your touch. Like, this is not innovative to me. And the reason
why not?
Because this is literally out, because this really sounds like a Chance the Rapper album. This sounds, if you want me to be honest, like really think about all the actual Christianity concepts, the gospel sounding songs on Donda. I didn't finish the album, but I'm saying for a fact, if you were to put Chance the Rapper on any of those songs, that would have been Chance the Rapper's album. And not for nothing, I'll go a step further and even say that some of the elements that he took a lot of elements of what he's doing now from Chance the Rapper's coloring book mixtape. He just brought it and said, I'm going to do it the Kanye. I'm going to make Kanye's coloring book.
I don't know that I'll give him this credit. One place I'll argue and say I disagree is the last part there, especially. And I like the album, so we disagree there. But I see what you're getting at here. When it comes to the sound, Kanye's career has been built off of repeatedly creating a new era of what he cultivates the vibe to be, right? And the vibe comes from the sound before even the rap and everything he puts on it and who comes on the songs and shit like that.
That's true.
Starting at the first album back in 2004, going all the way through now, and I think he's at, like 11 studio albums? Yeah. Something like that. They are all broken up into distinctive, completely different emotions that you get from each one. Maybe there were a few that overlapped, but you see like general eras.
Yeah.
And then like he got the black skinhead and it was like, whoa, like way out there, right? And so now Donda he went to the Jesus is King album and went through the whole like 2018 where he suddenly became even more aware of his Christianity and all that, and went for like a full gospel album, which is not my cup of tea, right? Like that actual album, I mean, it was brilliant, like the sounds and stuff, but that's not like, I'm not bumping Jesus is King like I'm bumping Life of Pablo. It's not even close. With Donda, he integrated some of the greatness of those sounds that he cultivated during this era, this born again, I don't want to say born again Christian, but where he was like really above and beyond about it, cultivated some of the great musical vibes he took from there, along with some of the themes where he's always talked about God in his music, so he kept that. And like one place that I don't really care, like he bleeped out anywhere where people curse. You know how I feel about that. Just fucking say it, dude. Like I wasn't a fan of, but whatever. You know, he took some of those themes, integrated it back into it, and then integrated the cultural Kanye into it. And to me, like also, I love the genius of the production quality of what he does, because what a lot of people still, for some reason, fail to give him credit for is that, yes, I think Kanye is a very good rapper and a great musician, a great artist, but like the thing that pushes him is the fact that he came up as a producer and he's fucking incredible. Incredible at sound. And I thought the sound was great.
Nah, the sound, don't get me wrong, the sound is great. But I think that the issue that I saw with it now, because I was really trying to think about it, it was really like, yo, it's like, okay, I'll put it like this. When we look at what Kanye has done, when we look at Yeezus, we see how that influenced a lot of Travis Scott's music, a lot of the rage rap sound that we listen to today. We see how that kind of influenced Travis. I said Travis already. Travis and rage rap. We see how Kid Cudi also influenced Travis Scott in terms of how he sounds on his albums sometimes. And
A$AP Rocky was the other one he said.
Yeah, and it's like, for me, what I saw was that with Chance, right? We saw how a lot of the College Dropout kind of influenced how Chance the Rapper is.
Yes.
But what you notice about all of these musicians that I'm saying is that what you've noticed is that all of these artists, the Chance, the Travis, I guess you could put Cudi in there a little bit because, you know, they work together, but it's like what you'll notice is that they made the sound and made it a lot better. They took the elements of what Kanye influenced, of the Kanye influences, and turn that into a much bigger sound. So when I say, like, when we talk about Kid Cudi, right? When we talk about Kid Cudi's last album was really good.
I agree. Yeah.
But it sounded very similar to a Travis Scott album. Not in the sense
you thought so?
Not in a sense of yo, this is like a rage album. But when you actually break down a lot of the elements on how it is, Travis likes to take you on the same story that Kid Cudi likes to take people on. When you look at how they use their voice, when you look at how they kind of rap, they do the upbeats, the yodeling, things of that nature, all those elements in a lot of those songs were there, even culturally a little bit in Kid Cudi's last album. It was there.
I gotta go listen to that again.
Yeah, it was a great album. Don't get me wrong. It was a great album. It was a great album. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that when we look at Kanye and I look at Donda, my biggest thing was that you had the College Dropout influence that influenced Chance. Chance brought it in what's the song called? I mean, not the mixtape called, in Acid Rap, the good ass intro and outro, and then he brought it back again for Coloring Book, right? And so for me, it was like we had Coloring Book, and Coloring Book was such a, in my opinion, a groundbreaking mixtape because of how it mixed all that stuff together. But now you kind of saw Kanye say, okay, we had this. I'm putting him on Ultralight Beam. It worked. Everybody loved it. And then you kind of just took everything. Mm-hmm. And then you were just like, all right, cool. Let me build off this Ultralight Beam, Chance the Rapper, Kirk Franklin, similar formula that I had. And then I'm going to expand it into this. And then I add the producer, not the actual making music, but the producer aspect of it. And so why that becomes an issue to me is like Kanye has said, Kanye sees himself as Steve Jobs. And one of the things that you'll notice, and this was something that I was also trying to explain to Mills and Shan, is that that's been my biggest issue with Kanye. It's when you look at what Apple has problems with, Kanye has issues with. Kanye had a debt issue. Apple had a debt issue. That's why they split their stocks. I mean, nobody really knows that, but yeah, they had a debt issue.
Can you elaborate there?
I mean, they split ends? So Kanye had a debt problem. He owed $66 million.
I remember that. This is what, like 2016?
Yeah, like a couple years ago, yeah. And then Apple also had a debt problem. This was like, I think like 1 or 2, 3 years ago. And they split their stock so people could buy more.
Apple had a debt problem?
Yeah, they have a debt problem.
But they have more cash than 77 countries combined.
They could still have a debt problem.
I got to look at that.
Yeah, I could be wrong on that.
All right.
Once again, that's just my headcanon. But
all right, yeah, we'll fact check that
later.
fact check that
later. But my point is that Kanye has very similar tendencies with Apple, if what I'm saying makes sense. The marketing, when you do the marketing,
yes,
both Kanye and Apple, their product isn't really built on the actual product. It's built on the anticipation of getting the product. So when Donda came out, what we saw was, you saw the presidency thing. Obviously, I'm not taking his mother's, but you saw the Drake thing. You saw everything coming out, and you kind of saw,
the listening parties.
The listening parties. Kanye was like, even before the listening parties came in, we had rumors that, Kanye's dropping Donda this year. Then he pushed it back. You know what I'm saying? He pushed it back.
Oh, he's a marketing genius.
Yeah.
Let's get that
That's
straight.
what I'm saying. Just like Apple knows exactly what the fuck they're doing. So when you saw the very similar elements, now what you see is that Apple drops the iPhone. They say, okay, we're unlocking the keyboard on the iPhone, so you can now use third-party apps to have different types of keyboards. We're now allowing certain people to now use FaceTime. You're opening up certain things, but it's like a lot of these things that you guys have been, like, Apple creates is groundbreaking. A lot of these other phone companies like Android have been doing for a while. Like, you can now change the widgets on your phone. You can now customize your phone. Like, Android's been doing that for years. And so now why I was saying the whole Chance the Rapper issue is that with Kanye is that when you look at Kanye, I'm not saying Kanye isn't great in what he does. I'm not saying the production wasn't good. But now when you look at it, the same stuff that Chance the Rapper was doing on Coloring Book, he now saw that and was like, okay, cool, I'm going to bring him an ultralight beam. And now I'm going to make this album. So now for me, I'm looking at it like, Chance the Rapper did this years ago, and it was like the best thing since sliced bread. You know what I'm saying? You remade How Great Is Our God. You remade all these different songs. Like, Chance has been doing that. Like, that's been his bag. And now Kanye came in with the Sunday Service and did the same thing. And then now you see Donda come out. And so now for me, why that was an issue with me was because Kanye, for me, I've always been so happy for him, and I resonate with him so much because he was different. And for me now, where he dropped this album, I kind of felt like he dropped the ball a lot because he was trying to do a lot of things that everybody is doing. And culturally, what ended up happening is that I think that he missed the ball on some things because he's very innovative. And I think the innovation part on some of those tracks, especially with Fivio Falafel, was not there.
Okay, wow. There's a lot to pick off there. There's no way I'm going to get to everything I'm thinking about that. But, okay. First thing on that final kind of point you were making right there where you're going through him ripping off music. Here's where that part doesn't quite sit right with me.
Okay.
You also said correctly that guys like Chance, and you can relate it, like in some ways, Travis, Cudi, whatever, they took elements of inspiration from Kanye's earlier album before they were up and then created their sound out of it. And now what you're saying is that you feel like he just copied the sound that they took to another level out of his inspiration and now is not doing something as original and is going towards what they're doing. What I think is that Kanye, who created this movement, if you want to call it that, even back in the day, is now the creator who is continuing to iterate on top of his own shit that other people happen to also iterate on top of, but he's the author. So, like, and not that they did this, I'm not calling them this, but I'm just using this as an example. You could call Cudi and Travis and those guys the plagiarizers, and I feel like now we're giving the plagiarizers credit for being the visionary when they copied the visionary to do their thing, and now the visionary's doing something that's close to the quote-unquote plagiarizers, but now we're making it the other way around, like the visionary's the plagiarizer. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, but I think what you have to understand is that as, like, it's... All right, cool. I get the shit on Fivio like this. So
I call him Fivio, by the way.
I call him Fivio,
have to call him
falafel,
Fivio.
falafel foreigner, whatever you want to call him. I
love Fivio, like the name.
Yeah, it's a nice name. He's a garbage drill rapper to me. But so I understand where you're coming from, but how I look at it is, just because you're the visionary doesn't necessarily mean that if somebody now takes elements of what you did and turned it into their own, doesn't necessarily mean that they're plagiarizing. And as Kanye being the visionary and Kanye being the innovator, what I would have expected would be for him to add more elements of things that are missing. I think that now that what me looking back on it, one song I do appreciate from Jesus is King is Follow God, because I didn't like the album at first, but I understood what it was. I didn't understand it now. I mean, but now that I understand like why I didn't like the whole him going the full gospel route makes sense to me. Like now, it's like I liked Follow God now looking at it, because it's like it was innovative. You literally were being Kanye and you applied it in a way in which you would consider it gospel. And that felt Kanye-ish, if what I'm saying makes sense. And so now, because he had that, I'm using this for example. When you use the Follow God track, I'm not saying everything has to be like this, but for you to have that, if you expanded on it in a way like that, instead of just saying, okay, Chance the Rapper did this, I'm taking all of this, and then I'm just gonna bring it and be Kanye and just add nice clothes, it becomes a different way. It becomes a little bit different. And what I guess I'm saying is that in terms of being a visionary, you seeing Chance and what he did, you have to see what Chance was missing. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that maybe I could give him credit in a sense if he did add a little bit more of the culture aspect to what Chance was kind of missing, because the thing is with Chance is that Chance seemed like the golden boy. You know what I mean? He was he couldn't do any wrong until, he started talking and doing politics and all that stuff, but that's besides the point. He couldn't do any wrong. But then now what ended up happening with Kanye, which I'll give Donda credit for now, is that he added a lot of that cultural element. You know what I mean? Yes. Even though I hate Fivio, and I still stand on this, that Fivio should not have been on that drill verse, it was still good that he still included that. I just personally think that in terms of him being innovative, once again, this is my bias. When Miles and Shannon listen to this, they're going to laugh. I think that they should have put a UK drill artist on there. And I don't say that because because UK drill is like, regardless of it starting in Chicago, regardless as if Fivio Foreign is the top drill rapper now.
Can you also tell people what drill is? Because it is a movement. It's wild, like how it started in Chicago, but then it kind of died, and the person bringing it back now is Lil Durk. But it's not. It has moved, as you're pointing out, it's moved on to other cultural epicenters, I guess you could say.
I guess the best way to describe, because I don't. So this is my problem with it. Before I say this, if I give my own personal definition of it, I would potentially be doing that a disservice, because I'm not from Chicago, nor am I a driller. So like, my thing is that when you look at drill, it really just ultimately depends on the person. Like, if you want to talk about Chicago, this is my opinion. This is not me saying I'm from Chicago, I know everything. But when we talk about the drill music is very heavy based. It's very, very violent. It's very
I'm just pointing. I have it behind us.
Dark, violent, nihilistic content. Yeah, I was going to say that. It's very dark. It's very violent. It's very, very to the point of what you're doing. It's a very
trap influence. That we
what I will say is it's very influenced on a lot of violence and ops and things of that nature to be funny. And so when you look at the drill movement, obviously it started with you had Chief Keef, you had Frito, you had Frito Santana, you had G Herbo, you had Lil Bibby, you had all these other rappers, and it did kind of die down because the Chicago movement, I wouldn't say it got weird, but that's when the people like Mick Jenkins and Vic Mensa and Chance the Rapper, could I say Chance, Mick Jenkins, Chance the Rapper, all came out, and you kind of saw Chicago kind of move away from that, because those three were not really necessarily drill rappers, but they were more so like, we're rapping about what Chicago is. Mind you, we have some of those content, but it's in a different way. Chance was the artsy guy.
Yes.
Vic is the very grungy type of guy. Mick Jenkins is I don't want to say soul, but he was kind of the soul out of the three of those guys in the sense of him being the guy that kind of took elements of, okay, I'm talking about God, I'm talking about this. Like, now I'm not saying he's like the forefather of it, but he was the guy that kind of had that concept of like, we're talking about Jesus Christ, we're talking about what the healing component is, we're talking about all these different things.
I mean, technically Kanye did talk about that.
I mean, yeah, I'm talking about like in this new movement of like the drill Chicago, like that particular era. So it was like that kind of happened. The drill movement, I want to say died out, but it just became a very, very regular thing. So it basically became McDonald's in a sense. Like drill was authentic, you had Chief Keef I don't like. Then they saw that worked. Oh, music labels are just throwing their money at all the little drill art, not little, but the drill artists. They give them money, deals, all this stuff, and it kind of died out. Went away for a while because obviously like Mick, Mick and Chance, that's actually rhymes, but yeah, they all kind of came out, and it became about them and how Chicago's turning into this thing where it's like you have the drill rappers and you have these three who are like, they look like, not in a sense, but in that Chicago essence, they look like the Kendrick J. Cole and Drake. You know what I mean? And so that kind of happened. It died out, came back, and obviously like the New York scene was picking up a little bit with that. But then at the same time, the UK also had their drill movement, and UK has very, very similar drill songs because a lot of their stuff is just as violent.
I want to stay with this because we're relating it to Donda, where you're saying Fivio was on there and you would have rather seen like the UK movement. But I want to make sure I touch part of the sidebar on drill because we've never brought up drill on this podcast, but it's such an interesting cultural phenomenon to me when you look at it. You said something in there where you were saying that the record, you mentioned like the record labels also. They did, but then they tried to switch it up, right? Yeah. So this is really important because we're seeing the pushback on this phenomenon now live through Lil Durk as like a forefront of it, because Lil Durk was a Chicago drill rapper, and he is now clearly a Chicago drill rapper again. The reason for that is because he blew up, not enormously, but he was big in like 2011, 2012, 2013. Gets a big label deal. I forget which one.
It's 300, I think it was.
No, he wasn't 300. Come on.
They could look it up.
Of course it'd be 300. They suck. But yeah, 300 Entertainment. Who are they partnered with now?
They got bought up by Sony.
Okay. So.
Oh yeah, I can't even look this up on airplane mode. But yeah, whenever you want to get the chance.
Yeah, I'll look that up in a minute. But either way, it was some sausage factory label. Yeah. Who then tried to mainstream him. They tried to say, no, that drill was cute, but we're gonna make you more. We're going to make you more appetizing for the public, which is it's what these stupid marketers do, but that's the worst idea. So they did that. They killed him. He was dead. He was literally dead in the water, so much so that they didn't even re-sign him because they're like, wow, you're done. He goes independent and says, fuck it, we're going back to what worked. Took a while, but he kept creating, and he's boom. I mean, he's the biggest drill rapper in the game right now.
I think that his new label got bought out by Sony, and that's why it's more so like, on that label, he's like the goal. He's like the priority. You know,
he also has his own, like it's the OTF thing.
Yeah. So it's like when you're in music labels, there's always a priority, and it's like even when you have like the smaller boutique labels or whatever they are, there's going to be the priority. Like when you look at Quality Control, like the priority now is Lil Baby, it's Cardi B.
Yes.
Who else is on there? I mean, the Migos is on there, but they're not the biggest priority. You know what I mean? And so when the City Girls, you have Cardi B, you have Lil Baby, and it used to be Lil Yachty, but he writes all the City Girl songs now. So it's like, for them, it becomes a situation where it's like, okay, Durk is our priority because Durk is the biggest star and he can make us the biggest return on investment. So now you see that. That's why you see Lil Durk all over the place doing features. He did the song with Drake. He did with Drake twice. He did a lot of these different things because he's the priority, and it's kind of like a favor thing in a sense for a lot of other labels. So Durk did blow up a lot throughout the last 2 3.
It was Def Jam, by the way.
Oh wow, I'm wrong. Yeah, it was Def Jam. Wow.
No, all good. It doesn't. The point is still the same.
Yeah,
it's fine. I just want to make sure.
So it's like it's like he ended up coming up now, and he is one of the biggest Chicago drill rappers now. King Von was on his way. King Von was there. R.I.P. to King Von, and it became a situation now where it's like
Do you know what the story there was, by the way? Or the conspiracy theorists about the Durk and Von thing?
No, and I don't.
It seemed ridiculous to me.
I don't like talking about all those conspiracy and death things because I like it's kind of I'm not saying annoying, but it's touchy to me only because of the fact like those are black boys, black men expressing a lot of pain through a lot of the stuff that they're doing, and it's like they're expressing that through music, and it's like it's really unfortunate that you're still in Chicago, or you're not even just in Chicago or any of those places, you're still dealing with those kind of things because it's like it's just you trying to get out and trying to make a better name for yourself, but you just end up being put back in these situations which forces you to do things that you really don't want to do. So it's like I don't like really speaking on those things too much, to be honest, because it's like it goes back to my whole thing of like I feel like music industry whores a lot of these young artists for a lot of different things.
They always have, and while they're allowed to still continue to exist in that way, they always will.
And that was my biggest issue. And going back to like the whole drill thing, like my whole biggest thing with my whole biggest thing in general is, and I've been trying to express this to Miles and Shan. I keep bringing them up because I always bring this up all the time because, I mean, granted, like I said, it's my personal bias, but it's also fact, right? Mm-hmm. We in America I think we are reaching a bubble of the music industry in terms of the content of what we're doing, and there needs to be innovation, just in my opinion.
What do you mean a bubble?
Kind of like you're getting to the point where we're literally making everything that we need to make in terms, especially in hip hop. Because it's like, really think about it.
I don't follow. Expand. Yeah.
All the songs on the radio is mostly rap, and we all talk about very similar things. We all talk about very similar perspectives. Everybody has very, very similar perspectives on just about everything. That's why we have the drill concept with Baby Keem because you got it on there, but when you have the drill, when you have Fivio Falafel talking about the same stuff that sounds similar to what a lot of these Chicago drill rappers are talking about. I'm not saying that they're the same because obviously these are all very how do I say this? They're all very unique stories, but it all still sounds very much the same. Everybody raps on the same exact BPM. Everybody has very similar flows, right? And when you go to the UK, these dudes rap on higher BPMs or the same BPMs, and they flow different, obviously because they have different accents. Mm-hmm. And so for me, why I find that so interesting, not even just on drill music, but just in music in general, is that they give you a fresh perspective of what's going on. And for me, because I'll say like hip hop, for me, I'll say is always telling a story about what we are and where we're at and our perspectives as African Americans. We have a whole nother country where a majority of the African Americans there are experiencing similar things in America, but we're just choosing to say we don't want to listen to them because they sound like they talk about crimson tea. And so for me, it's like we look at that, and not for nothing, these dudes spit, and it's not even on like, oh yeah, like they're whatever. Like no, they have drill stories. Like they have gangs that are just as big as gangs in America. And it's like we look at these stories, and it's like, yo, these situations are going on, and it's just like, bro, this goes on in a different country, and these people rap about these different things. It's like, yo, it's very, very vulnerable for them as well. And so for me, I would have found it interesting for Kanye to now bring that perspective into his album. You know what I mean? Just because of the fact that like you're an innovator. We already know what Fivio talks about. We already know what a lot of these Chicago, and I'm not saying they're bad, like besides Fivio, but at the same time, you have rappers who have changed the drill game, like Heady One, who rapped with Drake on his album. You have rappers like Millions. You have all these drill rappers that have these bars that, not for nothing, if you were to put them against a Fivio or you were to put them against some of these New York drill rappers, they're running circles around them. Like, and I'm not even saying that, and I'm saying that very, very, very generously, you know? And so I just think that in general, just with the Donda thing, he could have been more innovative with that. But in the bigger perspective, I think that we need to pay more attention to the UK because they have a lot of great R&B music. They have a lot of great rappers. And not for nothing, shameless plug, like Santan Dave has album of the year next to Tyler the Creator. And like he just rapped. Was no gimmicks, nothing. He came out 2 weeks. My album's dropping here. Here's my single. Have fun with it. And they literally rap circles probably better than the top 10, 15 rappers you would consider in an American rap game right now.
Well, yeah, because also half the game, 90% of the game is the marketing too, and everything that goes around that. And so if you're not, those guys aren't marketing it anywhere near like what Drake and Kanye did, for example, with Donda and CLB. But what's funny is we have the American culture is king bias here that we've had for a long time. It doesn't mean that we don't let things come in and recognize talent, but the reason I'm getting at this is because name a random country, it doesn't even matter what one, in Europe or like Asia or something.
France.
Okay, France. Bigger one, but still a good example. France fucks with 50 Cent when he came up. Yeah. They fuck with Kanye now. They like, if it's good, they're French. They're doing what they're doing. These guys might be talking about some shit in America and in English that they don't even understand, but like it's good, right? And they enjoy it. And then the people in France who speak English and can understand, they appreciate like a different perspective. Meaning they let things come in. Not that we don't do that here, we do. And like music started, the big music didn't start. The big countercultural music movement began with like you could say Elvis certainly, but then the thing that put it over the top was the Beatles and Rolling Stones, who weren't fucking from here.
Yeah.
But over time we've developed this thing where it's like we're good with what we got, and then like if something's amazing, we'll let it in, but like in doses.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I'll say that even with Drake, I'll bring that to hip hop, where it's like a lot of people. I mean, I personally am never doing this, but like a lot of people will not accept Drake as a top 10 rapper. And I 100% agree. I would not put him in top 10, but it's like Drake is so good that it's like you can't deny him in his talent, where he has to be somewhere. Like he's not top 25. He could be top 15. It's like and it's like you have to think about it, because it's like Drake's from Canada. You know what I'm saying?
And that's like it's tolerable.
Yeah, it's
right
tolerable.
There, you know what I mean?
You know what I mean?
Like,
yeah, that's the biggest thing that you look at. And since we're on that topic, what do you think of CLB?
I liked it. So and like now, obviously, like Kanye and Drake have played nice. I think that was all an act, but they're marketers. They know what they're doing. But like when people, to go off, besides some of the opinions you put out about Donda, maybe we'll wrap back around to that. But like when people go off these albums and these camps started right away, where it was like your team Donda or your team CLB, like fuck this, fuck that. One of the things I said immediately was stop it. I'm the kind of guy, and I'll admit Kobe's death was something that really influenced me in thinking this way. But like, when you have greatness, shut the fuck up with the bullshit and just appreciate. Yeah. You know what I mean? Kanye and Drake, I respect and like both of them. I would say the style of music, and I like Drake's music a lot. I bump it a lot. But like the style over the course of his career, yeah, I'd probably prefer Kanye a little bit. But that doesn't mean I'm like, yo, Kanye's better or whatever. I also, to raise the point you just made, and this is out of respect, by the way, I'll start with Drake. I don't put Drake in a rap category. I don't put him in an R&B category either. He's in a Drake category. Drake does shit. I could sit here and break it down bar by bar, word by word, style by style. I don't need to do that and bore some people. Almost spilled the coffee right there. Drake does this Drake thing, and you're like, oh, it comes on before you even hear his voice. You know it's a Drake song. I would also speak very similarly about Kanye. And Kanye is, I guess, more of a quote-unquote traditional rapper a lot of the time. Now it's starting to shift a little bit, but like, still, traditional rapper doing songs in 2008 or 2010, like Runaway. He's his own thing. You know, like I'm a Tupac guy, right? Love him. Know every single thing about him. It's kind of a sickness. I don't compare Drake or Kanye with Tupac or the other way around. It's respect, man. Like, it's not, you know what I mean? Like, we're in this weird spot in music in that way where, in a good way, I think, for the better, you can't put some of these guys in these boxes, because that's not what they are. Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is we always say it all the time, like when it comes to like hip hop and rapping, it's competition. And like, for example, like I think for me, one of the best Kanye stories I've heard was the Smucker story, where Tyler had sent his verse to
Kanye and Lil Wayne. Lil Wayne gave his verse back after Kanye, and then Kanye had listened to the whole song. Kanye came back and rewrote his whole verse. He came back and rewrote the whole thing because he was like, nah, I'm not going to let you beat me. You know what I mean? And so he came back, and then now when you hear the song, it's like, damn, that's Kanye. You know what I mean? And so it's like when we look at these things, it's you're 100% right. When we look at just traditional rapping, I think that's what it is. It's like there's just this competition thing that we want to always be like, you know what? Drake got it right now. It's the same thing with like, yo, Jay-Z got it right now. And I think like going back to your Drake point, it's like kind of like how I compared like Kanye to Apple. It's like Drake is really like, it's kind of very similar to Amazon. He's very, very similar to Amazon. It's in a point where it's like he's so good at every single facet, not at rap, but at music.
Yes. Yeah,
but
exactly.
It's like when you go to Drake, you remember that Drake was originally a rapper. Amazon originally started selling books, but they just started doing everything. They started branching out, experimenting a little bit, and then they figured out it worked, and then they figured out the formula. And that's really the thing that you figure out. It's like Drake, one of the things, and
Did you come up with that?
Yes, I did.
That's fucking genius. I've never heard someone put it. That is like, wow. I'm sorry. I got to give props to that. That was beautiful.
Appreciate it, man. Appreciate it. Yeah,
it's like, keep going.
It's like when you sit down and you look at Drake, right? What was I saying?
He was at like Amazon. He started as a rapper and branched off.
Yeah. So okay, that's what I was going to say. I liked CLB, but I didn't like it because what I liked about it was
the most Mus answer of all time.
It is. I liked it because, what I like about Drake is that he is very catchy. But the problem was that I heard all of the music before. That is the problem. And for Drake is all about the numbers, kind of similarly how Amazon is, right? And so for me, when you look at it, it's like Drake got really, really good at innovating and still being himself. When you see him go on a song with Wizkid, when you see him go on a song with J Balvin, when you see him go on a song with Heady One in the UK, it's like he's still Drake. And he never really changed who he was. It still felt very Drake-ish. But where my problem was that when it came to CLB, my problem with CLB was that there wasn't any of that innovation or that experiment that still worked. Like everything sounded the same. Like No Friends in Industry sounded like back to back. Champagne Poetry sounded very similar. Poppy's Home, a lot of the stuff that he has the very similar sound. But the number one thing is, like I said, he was about the numbers at this point. Like he's at the point now, like kind of like how Amazon is that he's maintaining where he's at.
Okay. All right.
If what I'm saying makes sense.
Now that closer landed it. Okay. So I think I took it differently than you in how I felt about it, but I actually share the opinion you did. You just put it right to me. If I were to describe CLB, I would say that it was a celebration album.
Yeah.
It was we're a year and a half into this pandemic. Obviously, the world's all fucked up, but we're at least going out and doing some things again and whatever. And I'm Drake. I'm still here doing my thing like I do every year, dropping an album. Let's do a good old-fashioned Drake vibe to close out Labor Day weekend in the summer and release this thing with some music going into the fall, and let's just have a good time. Like, when I look at CLB, I enjoy the album. I think it's a great album. Drake's a machine. He's done, I think it's like 13, 14 albums, whatever it is at this point, and he's been around. He came around 4 or 5 years after Kanye.
He's the only rapper. He's the only artist right now that has 2 albums. I think it might be on. I don't know if it's the Billboard 200, whatever Billboard album it is. But he's the only rapper that has 2 albums on there.
I think he also has
simultaneously.
He also has like the most streams or something on Spotify of all time.
Nuts.
Like he's insane. So he's brilliant. All this stuff. But like that said, yeah, I didn't think CLB was a top 3 album Drake's ever done. Just like by the way, and I love Donda too, but I don't think Donda's the top. I mean, I know you don't think that, but I don't think it's top 3 that Kanye's ever done. But to me, like that didn't change that I like both of them. Now, if Drake comes out and the next album is kind of once again the same kind of celebratory, sticking with the known comfortable vibes that he's now morphed to, say, over the last like 5 years, especially with the style, all right, I might be like, all right, now we're getting repetitive. Same thing with Kanye on the other end.
I don't think Drake is going to be repetitive on whatever project he brings out next, because it's when you really sit down and listen to all the tracks, like you have heard all those Drake tracks before. Like and that's part of the reason why I was like, it was a good album, because it was like, he gave us what we want. It was like, this goes back to my whole thing of like the anticipation of the album. When Drake was talking about, yo, this is my sixth album number 6, you know, it's like Drake has such a relation to the number 6. Like he did Scorpion, and that did numbers. So now when we're looking at it, we're looking at this anticipation, like, yo, like this is his 6th album, like this might be Drake's best work. You know what I'm saying? And that anticipation where he brought in the commercial, the trailer for his album, you started to see like, yo, like this album is really about to be fire. You know what I mean? And it goes back to what I was saying about the Kanye issue, not the Kanye issue with me as well, is like the anticipation was there so much where we were like, yo, like we're anticipating it. And then you had the Kanye and Drake dropping on the same day, similar day type of situation. And we were so like, the anticipation got built up so much to the point that when both those projects dropped, it was kind of like, okay.
A letdown for you.
Not a letdown. I was kind of just whelmed.
You were what?
Whelmed.
What the fuck does that mean?
You know how you're underwhelmed, overwhelmed? You're just whelmed.
Did you invent that?
No, I got it from Young Justice.
Okay. All right. I would have given you credit. You could have lied.
No, you never.
Okay, but you were whelmed.
Yeah. I was just, it was like, I expected more from both of them. And it's that, like, when you build, and that's what happens to, and that's what I think in a lot of, like, consumerism culture today, that's the biggest problem. It's like, we do the stuff to build the anticipation just to get the sales, but we don't really focus a lot of time on the longevity. Drake and Kanye are going to have that longevity just because of the fact of their brands. You know what I mean?
And I don't disagree with
that.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
But it's like when you have smaller artists trying to imitate that anticipation, what happens is that you now bring it into microwave rap, where it's like everybody just raps the same thing, and then now a couple months later, a year later, you're not really listening to the project. Like, it's like, who's like, I mean, obviously he's a little bit younger, but a lot of older people probably are not listening to Trippie Redd. A lot of older people are probably not listening to XXXTentacion. Like, a lot of these older people, when they want to listen to music, they want to listen to music that's going to last for them. You know what I mean? It's like, that's why people like Kendrick are so important, where it's like his anticipation is not because of the fact that you're building it. Like, the anticipation is coming because you know that he's coming to deliver a ridiculous project.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And every single time he's delivered. So the anticipation there has never been because, yo, I'm doing a gimmick, or it's I do this or I do that, or I'm trying to run for president, or I'm always marketing myself to always be around. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so it's like, for anticipation for me, that's the anticipation I expect for Drake and Kanye, where it's like his first 6 albums for Kanye, the anticipation was just because your albums were just that fucking great. Not because I'm running for president or Taylor Swift issue or whatever. You were just so good. It was like, yo, I want more.
Earned attention versus, but okay. You can't argue that. I don't care who you are. That point, the evidence is there. I mean, just look at this summer that we already mentioned as one Exhibit A example. Mm-hmm. These guys controlled the narrative for a span of, I'd say, 2 months.
To the point where, sorry not to cut you off, to the point where people are building, like, people are not dropping albums specifically within a month because they don't know if Drake or Kanye is dropping.
And they don't want to, yeah, exactly. So they had a stranglehold on it. Now, Drake's into a lot of things around culture and has businesses around that and is very interested in influencing things. But, and correct me if you disagree here, but he's not as into the meta, you know, like, let's talk about civilization and change through culture that Kanye's into. He's more like, Drake, we're chilling. Let's have a good time. Let's have, you know, good food, good wine, make some good music, have good fashion, right? So either way, though, they are both into some sort of setting at least pop cultural standards, even if it's for different end goals. That's what they both do.
Yeah.
And so the marketing around what they put out isn't just like, yo, I want to sell do the most album sales and the most streams here, how we measure that. It's also, how do we draw the most attention to either our message or our vibe, depending on which of the two you are. Mm-hmm. When these other people, including great artists, go the opposite route, and they're quieter people, they're not into that. They're into just making great art, and we appreciate it for it. Like The real fans appreciate that, and they may even have huge bases. When they do that, though, and there's a lot of different examples we could give, they don't have the same ripple effect on society because they have not generated that attention. Even, let's use Kendrick. Even Kendrick. Now, when he drops this project finally, that's been anticipated for what, like 3 years?
4 years, yeah.
4 years since the last album. Yes, he's Kendrick Lamar. It's going to go everywhere. People are going to love the fuck out of it, and it's going to be a big deal. It won't get to the same level, though, as like a Drake or Kanye, not because in his own lane, in his own style, Kendrick doesn't have the same ability or hasn't been able to capture crazy attention like they have in the past. It's more just because Kendrick is more content and happy to work on behind the scenes and not worry about the whole like promotion to the drop. You know what I mean?
And it's like for him and for him, it goes back to my point about the earned attention. It's like when he drops his music, you're listening to that stuff. Like you're like, it's one of those types of, it's the albums that you sit down and seriously listen to and dissect. So that's why people go back and listen to it. Even though people may not understand Damn, it's like Damn is just from a music perspective alone, people are going to go back and listen to that even till today. You know what I mean? Even when he probably drops his next project, they're still probably going to listen to it because it's such a great project. But like when you look at Drake and we look at Ye, when they do make the music that they do, well, now it comes to a point where it's like it's good enough to last X amount of years, or it's good enough to last until I can make something else and create an anticipation for something new. Meaning
the music dies and no one ever listens to it again? Like
not never listen to it again, but more recently what I think happens is that I think that with Drake and Ye, it's more so like, yo, this will last them about a year. This will last them about 2 years. This will last them about this. When you look at Kendrick has not dropped a track in 4 years. He dropped 1.5, he dropped 2 verses, and Kendrick Lamar is now relevant in the game again. And he still had
on Family Ties and what was the other one?
Range Brothers.
Okay.
And his other hidden track on Event, but that's besides the point. But my point is that like Kendrick dropped 3 verses, and literally it became a situation where damn, everybody's tweeting, oh damn, y'all might have fucked up because Kendrick might drop this year. It's like it became like damn,
it's still
Kendrick,
something. Yes,
it became a damn.
There.
You know what I mean? And it's like, yo, this will hold you over until I'm ready. You know what I mean? And it's like, for him, it's more so that I don't even know when I'm ready. So I need to put everything into this. So that's how when it's ready, it's ready. And when I'm ready for my next one, it's not going to be a formula. When I'm ready, I'm ready. Kanye and Drake kind of have a formula in which how they do things. So that sounds like this will last 2 years because the numbers show that the track that sounds like back to back lasted 6-7 months. Or tracks with Lil Durk last me about a year. Or my timestamp records last about 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks. I'm just throwing numbers out, but it's like.
By the way, Lil Durk's verse on Donda was genius.
Yeah, no, it was really
low
good.
Fucking key.
Yeah, it was really
we'll
good.
Get to that.
It was really good, and that's just what it is. I think that's the thing that they're looking at a little bit more, where it's like Kanye and Drake are looking at those numbers, so that's how they're like, yeah, this will last them like 2 years, or this will last me a while. Versus we look at Kendrick and it's like, well, I'm throwing my all into this and it's going to last until I want to drop another project or I'm ready to make another project that makes sense. You know what I mean? Not about money, all that stuff. It's just, I dropped that. And that's part of the reason why sometimes he may not even do the numbers, because it's like, it's not formula. It's not a formula. You know, Drake has that formula that once he gets it, it's there, you know?
And Drake is the most, and I don't say this as a shot at all, because it's like almost mathematical genius when you look at what he's done and how he's pulled it off and how it's a hit. Like he is a formulaic rapper.
Yes,
he knows what goes into making a hit, and he happens to make banger fucking music when he does it. So there are some people who give him a shit for that, but it's just typical people just doing the popular thing of not liking the most popular thing. Like that's all it is to me. And it's like, you can call it what you want. Just like we had the conversation and I'm saying like, I don't even call him a rapper. I call it, he's Drake, right? Yeah. You can call it whatever you want. I don't care. But like, it's good. Yeah. Like even if it's not your vibe, like it's fucking good. Like there are songs he makes that are like not my vibe, right? Where I'm like, all right, I'm probably not going to listen to that again. Even someone like CLB. I'm like, okay, not really. Same with Donda too. Yeah. There's some skips on there that I'm like, okay, I don't need that shit. But like, that's anything.
Yeah.
You know, even if I wasn't into that type of music, I'm into recognizing the talent behind it.
Yeah.
Now I'm into like literally every kind of music, but I even have made a concerted effort over the last year or so to do that with country. I fucking hate country.
No, I feel you.
It's my one music that I've just always been like, all right, a fucking bourbon, a beer, and a barn. Like, I get it,
Exactly.
right? Whatever. But it is more than that. And there are some people who are just fucking geniuses. There's this one kind of like large guy, fat dude, but I don't remember his name, but incredibly talented. He shows up on TikTok sometimes. He's like really famous, like one of the big, maybe Thomas Rhett or no, I don't know, but people know who I'm talking about. And like, he'll put out content of him writing new songs on there and playing it on the guitar, like in the tour bus, and it's fucking genius. And it's like, holy shit. And so like, I'll find a way to appreciate that. And I wish people were like that with all kinds of music. I wish people could be like, yo, I'm not into maybe like rap or something, but damn, yeah, that's some that's talent right there.
And I guess my shameless plug, because I'm a Kendrick stan. And I think that when Kendrick started winning his Pulitzer Prizes, when he started getting a lot of the I don't want to say they're weird awards, but you know, the actual like literature awards where it's like people are really listening to his stuff outside of like the culture. I think that's where people start to understand and appreciate things. Because it's like, once I saw Kendrick win a Pulitzer Prize for his album, I was like, yeah, no, you guys are not, you guys get it now. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's bigger than just saying like, yo, like, I got royalty inside my DNA. It's like, you're actually studying what he's trying to say. And it's like, for him, and that's part of the reason why for me, it's like, I've always found Kendrick and his evolution so beautiful, because it's like, you really watch this guy who still was an amazing rapper, who can rap rigor mortis, you know, from Section 80. And now you see how he fit all those words into, like, I think a 3-minute track. And now you see him in Damn, where it's like the words that he's saying mean so much more, but he's saying a lot less. If what I'm saying makes sense.
Yes.
Like when you look at a song called Lust, it's like, yo, like even the verse, it's like, it's very, very like, what's the word? What it's a simile, whatever the word is called. No, the parable. No, not parable.
I don't know.
Illusion, whatever. I'll say basically it's a reference of like, yo, like the concept. Oh, let me put the head in. And it's like, yo, what's your? I think he said like, what's your pleasure? Is it pride? Whatever it is. Like he's talking about like
alliteration.
No, it's not alliteration, because that's like isn't that the one with the Pete? Yo,
I forget. I'm just remembering English terms right now.
My 6th grade English teacher would be so mad, but it is what it is. But it's like he's referencing a lot of the points of like, yo, like what is your pleasure? And how pleasure isn't really the best for you. And it's like everybody has the concept of lust, because people automatically assume lust is sex. It's not always about sex when you're talking about lust. When he was talking about that song, it's like, yo, you could be lusting after money. You could be lusting after, you know, whatever it is that you want in life. And I found that so profound, amongst other things, about how he rapped about his life, how he even switched the album track list to me. It's such a beautiful album, and he's saying a lot less than how normal rappers say it, in my opinion. It's just very, very interesting. But
no, it's fair. And I mean, the book on him that a lot of people would agree with is that as a lyricist, he's absurdly good.
Yes.
I mean, there's a category of like, in today's times, especially with like Kendrick Lamar, J. Cole, guys like that, it's like, whoa.
Yeah, I put him. I actually have a theory. I'm putting it on here.
Go ahead.
My theory is that J. Cole and Wale are the same rapper.
J. Cole and Wale are the same rapper.
They're both equally the same talented individual.
You're talking to the right person to make that comment, because I was a day one Wale stan. And it was funny, I had someone else, I think it was Mike Collalori, was in here because he had some sort of business with Wale. And I was like, you know what? And now I've seen it the last couple months since he was here, but I was like, I haven't even heard Wale's name in like fucking 5 years.
Yeah, Wale.
But I used to bump him all the time.
He dropped an album a couple months ago.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like he dropped an album right after Mike was in here. But I still have to listen. Like I know he did it. I have not listened to it.
It was a great album.
You're gonna get a friend in that, in the sense that I know that shit when Wale came up, like what he was putting out. Like, you remember the Seinfeld mixtape?
Yes.
I mean,
one?
shit, like
the mixtape about nothing, more about nothing.
Yeah, mixtape about nothing.
Yeah.
Like when he came out with that was so different and like
innovative.
Dude, I used to hear those as like movies playing inside my head from his perspective about like a, you know, 80s and 90s sitcom of Jewish people living in New York, but it wasn't about that. You know what I mean? Like, it was fucking crazy.
The mixtape about nothing, and you rap about everything, and it's like, not for nothing. It's like one of my top 5 Wale songs is on there. Like my top 5 Wale verse is on there. It's the Chicago Falcon remix, where I'm the best even when I'm cynical. Handle these beats like with my pen involved. Some ain't nothing here minimal. Yeah. So it was like one of those. That verse was so profound, you know. And then you go to the mixtape about nothing, where more about nothing. That I don't even need to say anything about that. And then you have Back to the Future, where he was rapping. But point is, I'm becoming a stan right now. But point is, I think Wale and J. Cole are the same rapper, and people get mad at me when I say that. I think,
why did they get mad at you?
Because people don't respect Wale. Like, my whole thing has been this, right? I have a little bit of a bias against J. Cole because of his fans, and people act like J. Cole is his best thing. J. Cole's an amazing rapper. I just don't think that it's fair that y'all give J. Cole this much credit and Wale sits in the stands as if he's irrelevant.
I think it's just because J. Cole has been... forget even music for a second, though that was the case until Wale recently came out with an album. Over the last 5 years especially, J. Cole has been much more with attention and culture on a lot of different things. Like, he's in the middle of a lot of shit.
But I also...
Even like basketball games at Lifetime in the Sky, which is stupid, but I'm just saying.
I know what you're saying, but I think also what you have to understand is that I think that also plays into like the music industry as well, because it's like you have to be honest. Like, I mean, I was watching Wale's pull-up interview with Joe Budden, and it's like when you start to hear like some of the stories about rappers where you know the label, some guy who's on the label that you're on is best friends with your manager or your lawyer, and now they start to talk on the back end. It's like you don't know what's going on. You can't really trust everybody because it's like your manager may not have your best interest at heart because his best friend works on a label that's screwing you over. Right. You know what I mean? So it's like when you in that situation and you sign to a label that may not even put you as the priority, you now put yourself in a different position. And I think the biggest issue is that with Wale, people don't really understand how talented he is. And I say that because it's like a lot of the stuff J. Cole has talked about, a lot of the things that J. Cole's content, Wale has talked about. Well, we talk about, what was the song called? Wale dropped the song The Eye of the Tiger, right?
I remember that, yeah.
The Tiger Woods song. And we look at J. Cole now and everybody's like, oh my gosh, like J. Cole wrote a song called Kevin's Heart, like who really does that? And I'm looking at you guys, I'm like, yo, Wale literally wrote this song like almost 10 years ago. Yeah. You know what I mean? And it's like they have the same, the only difference that you could really say is the biggest difference between them is that they don't, Wale in terms of making a hit is a little bit different. You know what I mean? And sometimes people may not think that he has a lot to say. But I think that's also the same thing with J. Cole, where it's like J. Cole ran out of a lot of things to say. So the only thing he could really talk about is how great he is now. Wale has always been that great rapper, and Wale has always had that talent. He has the punchlines. He has the content, the storytelling, kind of like J. Cole has, but nobody really pays attention to it. Because it's like people don't feel like Wale has anything to say. I don't know. Maybe just my opinion.
Yeah, I'll say from my end, I never thought that. But look, people, it's narratives.
Yeah.
People, it's whatever some guy says, who's got a certain following, puts out whatever number of characters on Twitter. That's just a mic drop moment that might have no fact to it. Suddenly becomes a vibe. Same reason that like, and this is like a really stupid one to bring in, totally separate, but. The common joke, and I do it too, is like, oh, Nickelback, right? Like, oh my God, you're like, you know what I mean? Where we just did that because there's some simplicity to the quote unquote rock that they brought mainstream. Yeah. They still made hits. It's not like it was dog shit. It was like, there's some songs there like, yeah, you're moving your head to Nickelback. But we created this somewhere, like along the lines, someone, I'm not saying they tweeted out, it was probably even before then, but someone was like, oh, he's a Nickelback guy. And now it became like, oh, he's a Nickelback. And it became this punchline, and it gets repeated over and over. Then now people believe it completely, even if it's not completely true. Some of it might be, but whatever. And so, like, especially when you are not the one with that attention I was talking about a couple minutes ago, like J. Cole has more had in the past several years, and the cultural revolutions we've seen happen, like, with some of the stuff we talked about earlier in the podcast, totally different. Like some of the racial unrest and things in the pandemic era. Like when Wale's not in the middle of that, and it's like, oh yeah, Wale was around, people will create the narrative that it's like they'll forget what made him great that might be very similar or even like the same in a lot of ways as what J. Cole is and continues to be great for.
But I think that's not fair because Wale. It
isn't. It isn't.
No, and I only say that from a sense of when we look at like, say for example, last year, J. Cole didn't drop a project last year. Wale dropped a whole mixtape about literally everything that went on last year and named it The Perfect Storm, and not one person talks about that. Not one person talks about the mixtape.
I didn't even know that.
That's my point. It's like
I had no awareness.
It's like after a while, certain things, when we talk about certain rappers, certain things become just a label issue. And it's like, for me, I've always felt that Wale has had a label issue because it's like, there's no way that it's like, every time I talk to my homeboys, like, yo, I think Wale's top 5. Yo, you're bugging. How was Wale top 5? I think Wale's top 5, rapping wise. I think Big Sean is top 5 rapping wise. And people are like, yo, they're both but it's like the issue
it's perception.
It's not even, I mean, yeah, but it's like the problem is going back to the whole Drake, Ye, and Kendrick thing is like they're so good that it's like it's almost like they capture all 5 of the spots and then everybody else is like down here. And that's always been the biggest issue with like the top 5, like the top 5 categories. It's like if I talk about top 5 culturally, my top 5 cultural people that have influenced like hip hop is A$AP Rocky, Soulja Boy, and Chief Keef.
Modern day hip hop.
Yeah, like they influenced what we do today. If it wasn't for A$AP Rocky, not for nothing, the way people wear Air Force Ones now, they would not be doing it to keep it a stack. A$AP Rocky, and I was telling this to Miles and Shan, like people don't give A$AP Rocky enough respect. I'm just ranting off my music thoughts right now.
Kanye was saying this too.
Yeah, people don't give A$AP Rocky enough respect. Like A$AP Rocky has 2 Grammy nominated artists. He has his own collective. He literally creates one of the most groundbreaking music videos like 2, 3, 4 years ago, and it's like y'all act like yo he's dating Rihanna, he don't deserve to be there. And I'm looking at y'all like yo, you guys don't know who A$AP Rocky is. Like A$AP Rocky's the reason why the music that we have today is here. A$AP Rocky made it so when we listen to music, we don't know if it came from LA, the South, or the East Coast. He's part of the reason why. Statement. It is.
But yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah.
In terms of him mixing all the sounds together, that's what I'm trying to say. And for him, and for people to look at him as if it's like, yo, A$AP Rocky is trash. It's like A$AP Rocky's never been trash. A$AP Rocky's just been an experimental guy. And
people say that.
A lot of people said A$AP Rocky's
really
trash. Yeah. A lot of people think that.
Look, and people are entitled to their opinion, but like, maybe it's just me. I don't pay attention to any of that noise. I really, like, if I'm not even going to pay attention to it with, like, fucking Nickelback, of course I'm not paying attention to it. No. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, it's just, like, I'm not, like, I don't mean this in a conceited way, but it's just beneath what I need to, you know what I mean?
No, I get exactly
I don't need to waste my time with that energy.
No, I just pay attention to it because I like seeing where people's thoughts are at, because it's like it's going to be interesting, right? Because A$AP Rocky's dating Rihanna now, and like, you know, they're both musicians. It'll be an interesting perspective to see. I'm just saying, hypothetically speaking, if people don't like Rihanna's album, how they're going to blame A$AP Rocky, or if they don't like A$AP Rocky's album, they're going to blame the fact that he's trash and he's doing this and he's doing that. But it's like it's not really it. It's just artists grow, you know what I mean?
And I change,
think, yeah, and that's the reason why people like Kendrick, Wale, Big Sean are so important. And it's like it's part of the reason why for me about the whole UK thing, to bring back all together, it's like that's so important to me, because as a society, just bringing everything back together, we got to grow and change. It's like the story we've been telling ourselves is, like you said, America has this complex where we feel like we have what we need and it doesn't need to change. But it's like, what you don't understand is that you're missing a whole nother world of all these people who have all these different stories to tell. And it's not even the fact of like, it's more so about the fact you're not even choosing to acknowledge it because of whatever it is, whether if it's accents, whether if it's your own personal bias or whatever it is. And it's just like, bro, it's like, there are people in the UK right now that'll sit here and tell you the stories of the racism that they deal with, and you deal with the same thing. And the only reason why you don't want to listen to them is crumpets and tea. Like,
no, this is a good way to bring it full circle, though, because we just had a pretty amazing, like, all over the place state of hip hop discussion.
Yes,
I'm gonna enjoy listening back to that.
Yeah,
but it started off with talking about like, well, did you like Donda? And we touched that at some points, but that whole thing you just raised was born out of the fact, once again, that you had Fivio on there. You didn't have, you know, a UK drill rapper or something. And so that, I'm trying to bring this all full circle a little bit because it's complicated. But that whole thing was also, you had been saying that Donda was not, it was not like this innovative Kanye thing. He was just kind of doing the same thing and ripping off what other people were doing with sound. Where I want to also come into that. I mentioned the whole like visionary coming to plagiarizer and shit like that. That's one point. The second layer to it, though, is that I think you can also, I mean, there were 28 songs on the deluxe. I think there's like 29, including 2 part 2s. So let's call it like 27, something like that, right? You can rip off certain sounds that, like I said, there's even skips on there for me, where it's like, okay, yeah, I mean, you know, maybe that for some reason that sounds exactly like what Chance would do, and like, okay, whatever. There's also a lot of innovation, though, period, to me, in my opinion, because when Kanye goes in there and does this and sits with Mike Dean, and all, you know, he has access to the most genius people in the world to help him cultivate what he wants. These mixes are like a fucking religion. I mean, you see him listen to music for the first time when he's finding a sound. You see guys like Kanye, and not that he's on the same level, but a creative genius like a John Bellion or something like that, where we can watch that on tape and just see like, like their face, like there's something going on in their mind, like with these sounds and these pitches and these bars, that it just hits them different than it hits most people. It's special. Like, you know that's got that original nature to it. So where I'm coming back is that, like, I look at just as off the head examples of like different types of songs. Praise God, Jonah with Lil Durk, which I mentioned, Heaven and Hell, which my only complaint about that song is it was like 2 minutes long. I wanted a 3.5 minute song. That song was fucking genius. Yeah. And then even Jail, which was like a troll of people and also a geniusly put together mix by Mike Dean. And then the final one I would say is Off the Grid. You look at these, they all strayed from the gospel sound completely. Yeah, for sure. And they went, like, especially Praise God. Have you listened to that instrumental alone by itself?
Yeah, it's actually
holy
it's ridiculous.
Fucking shit.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
And Baby Keem had, I mean, that was one of the better verses I've ever heard in my life coming in on that album. So like when I look at the full body, okay, you want to throw something like, what's it called, Jesus Lord, those two to the wind, the fucking 11-minute songs, which Jay Electronica did body his verse in that. That was pretty.
And guess who had a Jay Electronica song before him?
Oh, fuck you. Okay. All right, either way. But still. But that's what I'm saying. Like that song. I'm not sitting here bumping like, Jesus, love. Like that comes on. I'm like, okay, let me skip the Jay's verse. All right, then we'll call it a day. But like these other songs here, these are like elements in the album where it's like, whoa. And then what he did with The Weeknd, I thought was simplistic and also a little bit complex, that minimalism, maximalism thing he does. And like, I'll listen, if The Weeknd shit on a track, I'm gonna listen to it. Yeah. You know, so like, I appreciate that. And that's why I thought it was a very good, well-rounded album. So I at least wanted to put that out there to see if, you know, I'm pushing back against you who just didn't think it was original at all and didn't seem to like it.
No, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's okay. I'm not saying it's not original. What I am saying is that it goes back to what we're saying about storytelling. Like, Chance the Rapper told that story. He told the story. Like, and I guess what I'm saying is that story was kind of mimicked and he made it into the Kanye story. But it kind of felt like if you were to put Chance's story on Donda, like, I'll say it like this. If you let Kanye executively produce that album, I think that Chance's next album, if he were to make that album, would sound exactly like Donda. If what I'm saying makes sense.
What about like all the love and relationship issues though? Because there was a lot of personal, either direct or indirect references to like the whole, you know, he's going through the divorce.
Yeah, I mean
Kim.
The divorce thing. Yeah, that's also the personal lyrics, which I'll always say that definitely that's part of Kanye's story. But I would also say that in a sense that Chance has also had those issues as well. So it's like it's more so about the fact of like when you look at the range of everything, it kind of does feel like it kind of felt like Coloring Book extended. I mean, at least we have Baby Keem, so.
Yeah. What do you? By the way, I do want to touch that before we move on.
Okay.
That kid's 20 years old. He came up, he's Kendrick Lamar's cousin, so he has the nepotism advantage of like being, you know, he does at least maybe get access to things. But I'm a huge fucking fan. I'm going to give it all the credit in the world. And here's the funniest part, man. When he did the first listening party and I had it playing and I have Twitter open to him working in here and they're live tweeting like who's on the tracks because he's not announcing it, and they're like, "Oh my god!" Because I'm bumping this song, I'm turning like, holy shit, this is getting bodied. And I see the tweets come in like, yo, Baby Keem is bodying this. And I'm not tweeting back, but I'm like, yeah, Baby Keem's totally bodying this. God damn, he's got great stuff. And then like 1 minute, 2 minutes, they're on the next song. 3 minutes goes by, and then I stop and I'm like, who the fuck is Baby Keem? It's like all these people you know, and like it sounded like this kind of like he belonged there and was born there. Like this is where he is. And I'm like, who the fuck is this guy?
Yeah.
And then I look it up and I see like, oh, he's coming out with his first album. He's 20 years old. I'm like, holy shit.
Yeah.
And then he comes out with, it's the Melodic Blue, right? That's what he called it?
Yeah.
And bro, I mean, my God, like he's got a different energy to him. But as far as like a debut album coming off of writing that verse on Praise God, which turned into one of the biggest songs in the world, I was like, oh my God, Hello World. This is like Tiger Woods coming into it when he did back in the day. Like Hello World, the whole thing.
I have a hot take.
All right, bring me the hot take. I know, of course, you got to have one.
I don't think Baby Keem wrote that whole album.
Like, did he get full credits of every single lyric on there?
He probably did, but I think Kendrick ghost wrote a lot of those.
I'll check that, but keep going.
I think that he ghost wrote a lot of those songs. And I'm not discrediting Baby Keem. I think that it was an amazing album. I just think that he was Kendrick's cousin, and Kendrick had 3 tracks on that album. He had three actual verses on that album.
This is a conspiracy theory. I have to say that.
I know.
Okay.
But I'm saying like even though he may have full credits on the album, I still do think that Kendrick probably ghost wrote a lot of that stuff for him, because it sound a little bit too Kendrick-y, if what I'm saying makes sense. Like if you listen to Range Brothers sounds like a full Kendrick verse.
Funny you say that. I'm looking at the producers right now and the writing credits, and I was looking at Range Brothers as you said that. The writer, Kendrick Duckworth. Kendrick Lamar.
Yeah.
So I could see some of that.
Like and that's what I'm saying. It's not about saying that Baby Keem is not talented. I think he is talented. I think that Kendrick definitely saw the talent. I just think that I was talking to somebody that I know about this. I think the biggest thing is that I think that he also just has to experience the world a little bit more, so he has a little bit more to say, because it's like it's not that the content is boring, but it seems like we've heard this before. And so growing up, it's like you want to be in a position where it's like now that you're gonna get older, whenever you drop your next album, you got to have shit to say, because you can't keep using the concept of, I used to pay for, mama used to do this, mom used to do this, mom used to do this.
Okay.
And so now when you get to your next album, it gotta be, like, I grew the fuck up and this is the shit that I'm experiencing now as a man. You know what I mean? And that's just what it is. I think that he's good for a 20-year-old kid who, who's grown up with the family, you know what I mean? And that's Kendrick as your cousin. But that next album, like, people are going to be looking at you, because I don't think Kendrick is going to be on that whole album, or he's even going to be on the album.
And he was on 2 songs officially on that album.
Officially, yeah. He has a third. The song Vent. Kendrick has a verse, but they took it off.
Okay. So I've listened to that album a bunch. I've listened to it in 2 settings mostly. I've listened to it when I'm working out, and I've listened to it in the background when I'm working in here. And I've heard a lot of the lyrics, but I need to do a deep dive and actually like corroborate what you're saying to be able to speak completely educated on that. What I will say is some of the songs that I paid the most attention to, I'll use one example to keep it simple. The very first song on the album, Trademark USA.
Yeah.
That's a Baby Keem song. Like, I never heard some shit like that. That was fucking... For people that haven't heard that, that is what I would call a 3-act song. In one song, inside of 4.5 minutes. It's not like 10 minutes. And it is just like, it comes out feeling a certain type of way, and you're like, oh, hello. And then it goes to... It kind of comes down and with like a fucking steady vibe, and then goes vroom, through the roof again. And you're like... Like, I listened to that album for the first time an hour after it came out, at like 1 a.m. on a Friday, and I'm like fucking in here, like up on my feet, like, oh my God, what? And I think you tweeted out, you're like, oh, Keem's rapping on this, and I'm like, fuck yeah, he is. And so I know that element exists there. Would it surprise me, and does it not surprise me, that I can literally look at the credits right here as you're saying that and corroborate that, at least at what I'm looking at, like 4 songs on there, that Kendrick has an influence as one of the greatest lyricists of all time, who also happens to be his fucking cousin, including a song on there called Family Ties, which, let's not bury the lead here. Yeah. No, it doesn't surprise me at all, and I'm okay with that. If your point's taken, though, if that were to just kind of be the MO here, and he does 2 studio albums over the next 3 years or something, and it's kind of the same vibe, and you're seeing a lot of the writing credits coming from Kendrick, then people can start to question what the narrative there is. But like, I mean, you want to start on like some of the features he's done. The main one that we actually know that's like a main one in public. I mean, Jesus Christ, the lyrics on Praise God were like, I'm sitting in here like, and I'm repeating. I don't even know what I'm saying half the time, and it's just stuck in my head.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, dude.
Yeah, nah, for sure, definitely. I'll agree with that. I think that I don't know about the 2 albums and having Kendrick still write something. Then we can make that, because like I said, ghostwriting, you may just not get those credits, but you still may have that influence. So I do.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
So like I do get where you're coming from, but if it does sound similar like the Melodic Blue, I think that we're gonna have to start asking questions. Like I don't think that he wrote that full album.
Okay. All right. I'll pay attention.
Okay.
I knew you had to have a hot take on that. It could be all.
Yeah, no, it was a great album. I just don't think that's fully Baby Keem. Some of those lyrics, not taking those Kendrick verses, taking those Kendrick songs out. Some of it sounds really like something that Kendrick would write.
Nonetheless, though, impressive 20-year-old coming onto the scene.
Oh, yes, definitely.
Okay. All right, cool. We'll agree on that. But you had brought up something. I just remembered this, and it's a little different, but fuck it. Let's just go there. You brought up something when we came in that I still got to like process a little bit because I had no awareness of this, but Virgil Abloh died today?
Yeah, like he died as we were recording this, and it was interesting. He died from cancer. And he was apparently battling cancer for a couple of years, and nobody knew.
Privately.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just looking at the thing.
And I mean, I think that he's a very innovative individual.
Tell people who he is, who don't know.
Virgil Abloh. I don't know what the letters stand for, but he is currently the head of LVMH. He's also the owner and one of the co-founders or the actual founder of the Off-White brand. Yep. He's also, I think he's the creative director, was the current creative director of Louis Vuitton.
The artistic director.
Yeah, artistic director.
Yeah,
of the menswear. And yeah, he definitely influenced culture a lot. He's just a creative person. He was, when Kanye went on his disappearing act after the Taylor Swift incident back in 2010, Virgil Abloh, who was also a DJ, was with Kanye West during that time when he was making My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. So during that time frame, like, Virgil Abloh was definitely around. I definitely believe it was him.
I mean, I know Kanye and him were friends because Kanye's talked about him before,
yeah.
But he was a major. I didn't know that he was a major influence on that album.
They were together, yeah. They were. He was. I forgot where he said this in one interview. They were saying that they were working on Photoshop, learning Photoshop together. Like he was there with him, like 100%. Like that's his. Wow. That's his man's. Like it used to be him. There's a picture of Kanye when he had the 808s mohawk with the suit. Yeah. And there was a couple other people. I think Virgil's in that picture. I could be wrong, but I think Virgil is in that picture. Virgil has been in Kanye's corner for a while, and I think that's been, in terms of him being influenced fashion-wise, like that was another one of someone that he collaborated with, and I think we have to definitely speak to that because he definitely was a cultural icon, definitely being one of the first African American, and I didn't want to be taken even further, being one of the first African creative directors for a brand such as Louis Vuitton and LVMH is very iconic. Being a part of one of the greatest albums that ever created, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, is something to be a testament to. His creative vision is very, 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 very vast. And even just for him to apply simplicity to things like Nike Dunks and Air Jordan 1s with his Off-White collaborations, it kind of shows how much he understood the culture and how much he knows shit just works. And I think that it's a beautiful thing that when we have creators in that way, just get it and can directly connect with what they're feeling and how they're feeling and how things should look to the consumer. Not everybody's going to get the Air Jordan 1s, or not everybody's going to understand Virgil Abloh's vision, but it's like, as a black man who loves color, who puts color on different types of hues and different types of shades of people, it's really beautiful to see he's getting his flowers for all that he's really done and how he's really influenced a lot of people and actually gave a lot of people creative direction. And rest in peace to him, and I hope, and prayers up for his family, and I just hope everybody is okay during that troubling time, honestly.
I mean, look, he did get a solid amount of credit during his life, which is good because I like to see that. It kind of, I mean, makes people a legend and stuff, but it sucks when you see people never get credit when they live and then suddenly they die, and now suddenly everyone's like, holy shit, they were amazing. So it's nice to see like he actually got that and felt that appreciation while he was here. I do think he's going to get a fuck ton more of it though in his death, because like this whole thing is so interesting to me, how all these cultural phenomena started to bridge together in a way they never had in, say, the late 2000s through guys like Kanye and stuff like that, where for real, they made, like, of course, fashion and music were always a thing, but now they brought them into business together. And then they started to also then change culture and make things like from minority cultures that are now mainstream and appreciated to like your quote-unquote mom and pop white audience in a way, your suburban male, white male, and things like that, where, you know, if we would have sat here when we were kids in the 2000s and said, hey, by 2020, 2021, even before then, but when we're sitting here in those years, we're going to see not only that, say, like black culture inspired streetwear has taken a hold of a lot of the fashion industry, but we're going to see traditional fucking over the top bougie ass brands like Louis Vuitton and Gucci or whatever, you know, all these different places not only incorporate that, but say, fuck it, that's going to lead the way now. And they take someone like Virgil who founds Off-White and they bring him in and say, artistic director, your show, baby.
It's a beautiful thing. And I think that going back to what I was saying earlier about the culture, it's like, I'm taking out the societal aspect of everything and like the downtroddenness, and I'll say it like this: it's beautiful to see when we're able to express and we're able to show our culture in such a way and it gets acknowledged. I'm not saying that the acknowledgement is like the end all be all, but what I mean by that is like it's acknowledged in a sense of we see that you have talent, and we see how much you understand culture, and we understand how much you have been a part of culture. We want to be able to help apply that culture to what we're doing. The fact that you have an African man applying the culture to a brand that is built on a culture that has originally been, in a lot of cases, for a lot of higher class white people, it's beautiful. I don't know if what I'm saying makes sense in that.
100%.
But it's like it just shows that like this is what happens when you're able to respect somebody's culture, acknowledge that, you know, that culture is important, and actually apply it and put people in position to apply that culture the way that they see fit. And I'll say that a lot of Virgil's collections for the men has been some of the most beautiful pieces I've seen. You know what I mean?
I mean,
it's
just
beautiful.
start with Off-White.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I love simplicity, and a lot of people don't realize it, but they love it. It's a natural human thing.
Yeah.
I mean, Jesus Christ, man. Like, even as someone, I'm never going to lie and act, I'm a simple guy, right? I wear some clothes that I bought fucking 11 years ago. But, like, I love fashion, like looking at it and seeing what the mind's eye comes up with. That's why I was talking about my buddy Wahid, incredible artist who integrates hip-hop culture and fashion into his work, and it's like I could look at that all day. It's like, oh, I'd never wear that, but goddamn, like, wow. And to see the movement, that was not a wave, that was a movement, that, and it wasn't just Off-White, in fairness. Obviously we have to give our flowers to different companies here, but like to see that movement created all almost in concert with each other, where you start to then appreciate a different cultural side of simplicity. It's not just this, and no disrespect, like to Steve Jobs, obviously, but it's not just this regular old white space Apple for nobody. It's more like, yo, there's a bend on this that shows you, if like me, a suburban white guy, like a different end of the spectrum that you can appreciate. I think that's awesome. The downside to it that I often think about, because I think in culture, like, you and I always talk about call-out culture and stuff and how stupid it is. But, like, we get dangerously down this slope of calling anything cultural appropriation on things. Now, when people do some shit that's clearly like, what the fuck, man? Okay, fine. But there's other times where people are just actually now maybe like regular old white people are appreciating, or that's absolutely the intention. Like, yo, for example, black people came up with whatever X style is. That's fucking awesome. I'm in. And then they might get called out for being like, oh, you're culturally appropriating. To me, they're just like, that's not the intention. They're like, no, we fucking respect this. So I kind of wonder why that still exists when we've now even quote unquote mainstreamed great, even culturally black designs and things like that through things like Off-White.
It's because the thing is, it's not just about it depends on what you're doing and what it is. It's like, for example, we'll say, I'll use the common example of black women can't wear their hair out and they can't wear an afro in the workplace because it's deemed unprofessional. Versus some places. I'm using this as an example. Versus, okay, white women gets micro braids with extensions, and it's like, oh my gosh, it's this new innovative style. It's like when Kylie Jenner gets her micro braids, it's like, oh my gosh, it's so innovative. And it's like, bro, it becomes irritating to a lot of women, for example. It's because it's like Kylie will now kind of make it seem like she just came up with this idea, and like a lot of news feeds will be like, oh my gosh, it's so innovative. And it's like, if you're really in tune with the culture, you're gonna understand that Kylie Jenner did not create micro braids. She did not create knotless braids. Like,
do you think she really takes credit for that though?
I'm
not even going to sit here and like try to act like the Kardashians don't
market
the fuck out
it's
themselves.
The issue is, even if she, let's say that she doesn't privately, publicly she doesn't say anything, and that's part of the issue. It's like when you have a culture, you kind of have to acknowledge where it came from. If I'm going to sit here and talk, if people are going to sit here and talk about actually, perfect example. When we talk about The Lion King, for example, how it's this great Disney movie, we never give credit to the original Lion King movie that came out 1960 something. That was an anime. That was an actual Japanese movie.
I know nothing about this.
Yeah, so I forgot the guy's name. There is a movie. Thank you. There is a movie that Disney essentially bit off of, and a lot of the key frames that The Lion King has came from that film. And a lot of people don't know that. And I'm using that as an example as cultural appropriation to say, it's like, you kind of took that, and you took those elements, and people don't know about where it originally came from unless you look it up.
I just want to read this so people know what you're talking about.
Kimba the White Lion.
And this is right off of Wikipedia, people. Yes. Kimba the White Lion, Japanese shonen manga series, written and illustrated by Osamu Tezuka, which was serialized in the Manga Shonen magazine from November 1950 to April 1954. An anime based on the manga was created by Mushi Productions. But where's the part I just saw about Lion King? It was saying the Lion King controversy. That's what I wanted. As a number of journalists, scholars, and fans watch Disney's animated feature, The Lion King, they notice characters, plot lines, sequences, and events in the story resembling those of Kimba. And what you're pointing out is that there was a lack of acknowledgement of that. Like, they were acting like, oh no, this is just us. Like, and that's where I have a problem too.
And the bigger issue is that you'll see a lot of clothing brands do this too. Well, I'm gonna plug it in. Like, I have a friend of mine who works for this Jersey company called Brown Mill, right? Okay. They just dropped their new line, right? And one of the funniest things that you'll see is that they had this particular font that they had on their clothes, and it was innovative. I'm actually going to go buy myself a sweater probably sometime this week whenever I decide to go to North Jersey. And what you find later is that in a couple weeks later, H&M has the same exact font. And it's like not for nothing, this isn't the first time H&M has done that. This isn't the first time, like, a company like Supreme may have done that to somebody else. Like people like what's the company's name? It's Kirby, whatever his name is. I forgot his name, but Kirby Jean something. I'm forgetting his name. He bit off another brand from Jersey as well. There's a guy in Jersey that he bit off of. And he has a store in
Kirby Jean Raymond?
Yeah, Kirby Jean Raymond. And it's like we have these different situations where it's like a lot of these people culturally take this stuff that's influenced by one thing or another and they just apply it to themselves because they're a bigger brand. And what happens now is that these people don't get that acknowledgement. The people that created it don't get that acknowledgement. And so now going back to someone like Kylie Jenner, who, does a lot of different things that a lot of black women do and they don't get their credit. It sucks because now Kylie looks as this innovator, Kirby looks like this innovator, H&M looks like these innovators for fast fashion, and it's like there's these little people at the bottom like the Brown Mills. I'm not saying they're little, but I'm saying this in a sense of like they're the smaller entities. These smaller entities have created these visions for themselves because they're so creative, and then now the bigger companies just take that and they mass produce it, and it looks like they came up with the idea, and it sucks. You know what I mean? And it's like, not for nothing, I literally watched Brown Mills start from them selling shirts in my student center when I'm going to the dining hall to now they have their own store. And so for me, I'm not a part of it, but for me to sit here and look at it, and now I see H&M stealing font, it's like, bro, it's like, you're taking what they thought would be culturally appropriate for what they're doing and their vision. With no credit.
Yes.
And now it's like, oh my gosh, this is so cool.
Now glad you said that. That is cultural appropriation to me.
Yeah, that's what it is. When
that's where I'm like 100% use it all day. What I feel like is we've extended it to ridiculous places where no one's monetizing any. Like, here's an example. Adam Levine got cornrows. I've said this one before. This is just like a blatant example. He got like blonde cornrows, just like, I don't know if he was like on vacation. He was on like vacation or something, and he meant nothing by it other than like, oh, this was a fun thing to do. Anyone with half a brain who has been accessing the internet at any point or has eyes to see a TV in the last 25 years knows damn well that the cornrow look was created by the black community, and it is absolutely something that they innovated. And I mean, I grew up an Allen Iverson fan. I fucking love cornrows, right? No one's sitting here going, Adam Levine created the cornrow. But they got all over him, like cultural appropriation and all that. And he was like taken aback, like, oh my God, that's not what I meant at all. And to me, that's where it's like, you want to talk about taking it to a place where it's not supposed to be? That's an example.
I think that in that particular instance, I think the problem is not about maybe the Adam Levine, but the company or the news outlet that'll now say something that Adam Levine did something new. Like, let's say, for example,
they're not going to say that though about cornrows.
But what I'm saying is, it may not be about cornrows for black people. It's like saying, okay, cool, Adam Levine did cornrows. Now, next thing you know, GQ's talking about 5 cornrow styles that you could do for your hair this summer.
Talking about white people.
Yeah, and it's like, for them, it becomes a situation where it's like, all right, now it's becoming a situation where it's like, now you're using this for your own monetary gain, and you're not even really referencing this type of where it really came from.
That's also not Adam Levine's fault, though.
You know, it's not his fault.
Okay.
But
that's what I'm getting at. But don't call him out. Call out GQ for doing that.
But I think the issue that happens with that, I understand it's not his fault, but I think what happens with that in a lot of cases is that people see that, but they see where it's going to go. And that's why they get upset. It's more so about the fact of, I feel like a lot of people feel that in those cases, a lot of white people should be cognizant of the fact that when you do certain things, even though you may mean no harm, if you do or say certain things that even though you may not be a cultural appropriator, somebody else will see that and think that they can do that free of charge. And that's, I think, why people get so upset about the celebrities doing it that are not white, like
that are not black.
Black, not black. Sorry, yeah. And that's the biggest thing. It's I get where you're coming from. It's just more so, it's about being cognizant of the fact of, you're a celebrity, you have influence. This will literally spread quickly, and now all of a sudden you have 10-year-old Johnny running around with cornrows in his hair as if he knows how to do that shit.
How do you kill that, though? You kill it by having more people just not make it a news story, by just doing things that they appreciate and being like, yo, I appreciate that. And then eventually no one actually being able to take advantage of it. And so I think when we micro just demonize one example like that, then it scares off other people from even like trying things if they have attention, like a celebrity or something. Don't try things just for the sake of attention. Yeah. I don't ever want to reward that. That's not what he was doing there.
No,
right? So,
for a fact.
Like, I agree with your point. What I will do in the future that I don't know if you'll agree with is, if I see individual situations where there's clearly no intent or harm foul, in fact, quite the opposite, and then other people take advantage of it, I'm going to say, like, yo, the GQs of the world, let's call out that if we're going to do it. That's stupid. Let's not then demonize this person right here. And I mean, you and I both know it, and we feed into it. I'll admit on my end, I feed into it for some things, but we're more people in positions of power. we're more likely to see the negative effects of things they do, or not more likely to see it, but we're more likely to be loud in calling that out when it happens because it's the easy thing to do.
I think, I think you're right. I just think that, how do I say this? It goes back to what we were talking about earlier about race. It's like I said, for long periods of time, black women, black men, you can't have dreads. You can't have dreads at work. Dreads are unprofessional. You can't have braids. Braids are unprofessional. You need to have some type of professional hairstyle. For black men, if you grow your dreads out, it's not professional. Even if we know as a community, people actually pay to get that shit done to look nice, right? Not for nothing. A lot of white people, they can dread their hair. They can have their hair any type of similar style, or to an extent, obviously.
And in corporate America?
To an extent. Okay. To an extent. It's like you can do certain things to an extent. Obviously, like we all know that you can't have like you can't have spiked blue hair to an extent. Like we all understand that.
Depending where you're at.
Yeah, but I'm saying this in a sense of like, if you want to have a Steve Jobs cut, for example, you can have that Steve Jobs cut because it's natural. But a woman can't have a black woman can't have a protective style. She can't have her dreads out. That's where the issue comes in. So now when you have
that's a better example, by the way.
Yeah, when you have
that's a better example.
Yeah. So when you have like an Adam Levine come in and now GQ speaks about it, now the workplace, I mean, we're reviewing the dress codes, you know. Oh, cornrows, you know. And now you see all these different people come in, and it's almost like a slap into these people's faces where it's like, yo, like just last year, the company policy was that I can't have my protective style out, and I wasted all this money trying to make sure that I was looking professional so I keep my job. Now Susan can come in and she can dread her hair, and she doesn't get any slack for it. That's not fair to me. You get what I mean? And I think that's a lot of the reasons why I say like when it comes to a lot of white people, it's not just about the fact of, yo, like you guys are these evil people, but sometimes like the annoyance comes from the fact of there's not enough mindfulness and cognizance of the fact of there are some things that y'all can get away with that easily, and y'all can change the rules and it works for you guys.
It's annoying.
Well, yeah, but it's like we have to go through all these loops and hassles to even get the basic respect of us feeling like we could do not do what we want, but be ourselves and still feel okay without feeling like we're doing something wrong.
It's about, and this is a sick way of putting it, but it's also true.
Yeah.
In the past, especially when it was even worse, it's about a combination of mathematical representation.
Yeah.
And what's the word I'm looking for? Cultural baseline expectations.
Yeah. So
like mathematically there are more non-black people and even like white people obviously than there are black people.
Yeah.
By I forget the exact percentages right now, but it's significant still to this point. So what is a more likely in a room to be recognized, whatever, like fashionability with what you do with your body? A white person over a black person strictly by that there might be 5 white people in a room while there's 1 black person.
Yeah.
So if more people then who are across decision-making jobs at different places happen to be white, and even in an equal world where just mathematically that's going to be the case strictly because there's more representation, their baseline is going to be what white people, quote unquote, are willing to accept. So then as things get more accepted from other cultures in the white diaspora, it gets annoying to you and people in the black community when things that you would have gotten shit for or fired even 5 years ago now are okay. Even if it's okay for you now too, it's like, well, why the fuck wasn't it okay 5 years ago?
Yeah.
I get that.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. I get that. That's always been the biggest thing.
That's fair. But one last thing before we get out of here that I could not talk with you about, because it also hasn't been talked about on this podcast yet. It hasn't come up. But it's still all obviously kind of simmering, and there's probably a lot more things we're going to hear about this, for better or worse, but the whole Travis Scott thing at Astroworld. Do you have any thoughts on that? So, yes?
Travis Scott is not at fault. Travis Scott's duty is to bring people to pay for the Astroworld Festival. Travis Scott does not know shit about running a music festival. So for us to now blame him, to blame Drake, makes no fucking sense. Drake was there as a guest. He was paid to be a guest. Travis Scott's team more than likely was not in charge of the festival. They hired an external vendor.
There was. Live
Yes.
Nation was involved, yeah.
Yeah, not even just Live Nation.
There was more than that, but yes.
The other like it goes down to the smaller, and this is, and I got so pissed about this because it's like the issue with the issue with this whole thing for me was that you listen to Baby Keem when you go work out. I'm not listening to Lost Souls in the fucking gym. I'm not. That's it. If I'm under the influence of alcohol, I probably went and probably bought drugs before the festival, like a lot of people do before music festivals, smoked weed, Molly, whatever, let's call it what it is. And I'm on edge. Travis Scott comes out, and I rage out and I act out. Is Travis Scott at fault for how you act out when No Bystanders comes on? If I just get drunk and No Bystanders comes on and all I do is bob my head like I do when I'm going to work, is Travis Scott at fault for that? How the crowd reacts to certain things is not Travis Scott's responsibility. And you can't blame him for how these people acted under the influence of whatever they're taking. Let's call it what it is. We both went to school. We seen how a lot of these frat boys act when they get drugs in their system and they have alcohol. They run through fucking doors, they jump on fucking tables and break them. So now, not for nothing, you now had these young kids who are all in college now come in.
By and large.
By and large, came in and did that. Now,
or younger too.
Yeah, younger. And then not for nothing, in addition to that, you are now putting Travis Scott, you're now holding him liable for the situation of having a smaller vendor who is in charge. Now, I'm not talking about the big entity of who made the festival. Those big entities that make the festival hire smaller entities that do the small things, like whether if it's drinks, food, snacks.
It's like a corporation.
Yeah, it's like a corporation, but you hire these small people. And you know what those super small people do? They put their ads up on Craigslist, on Indeed. They do all that stuff. They even may do a word of mouth where it's like, hey, I'm hiring these people. I did that because I did the PGA Tour like 2017, 2016.
Really?
Yeah. And the guy, and how it came out.
Oh, you told me that. You did tell me.
Yeah, and like what ended up happening was that like the guy, we met in like some back of a restaurant, like, hey, like I'm hiring you 13 people for this, that, and the third. I've never cooked a fucking festival hamburger in my life. Right. They come in, they teach you on the spot, hey, this is this, until when it's 136 degrees, you take it off, this, that, and the third. So my thing is that these super small entities hire these people. Some of these people didn't know shit about shit because they didn't know shit about shit. They just got hired. So now to hold Travis Scott liable for the hiring practices of all these smaller entities, which now go into the big entity that basically executed the festival, is stupid. That $2 billion lawsuit is not going to happen. That's Tony Busby being Tony Busby. He can go fuck himself. To be honest with you,
that's our guy.
And he can go fuck himself disrespectfully. And that's my whole thing. It's like the Travis Scott thing is kind of annoying. And the last thing I'll say is this: bring it back, because we've talked about race a lot today. I find it ironic that we have this much hate for a black man saying his music is demonic, it's nihilistic, it's this, that, and the third. Not for nothing, and I'm not throwing this out there. What is heavy metal?
Yeah.
When you listen to Metallica, people fucking smash their guitars on stage.
And with Travis, it's an act. Like it's that's why people buy it. It's not like a thing. It's an act.
Yeah, and it's like you have all these different things. You have mosh pits. You have mosh pits going on all these other places, and nobody says anything. But the moment a black man who's at the top of his career, one of the most marketable artists in the world, now this happens, and now you're telling me that this was bigger than the fact of 400,000 people who smoked a bunch of weed at fucking Woodstock. That shit was not. This is more important than 10 people died. Yes, these 10 people are important. But the thing is, it's more important than the fact of women were literally getting raped in the crowds at Woodstock, and people don't know about that.
All right, and you know what? And I'm not even disagreeing. I'll discredit for the sake of our argument here, just because like something like that is so fucking long ago. It's a different world.
Yeah.
But I'm happy this is your opinion on it. I want to add more context too to see what you think. But that is my opinion as well. And again, we got to see more stuff come out just to see who knew what. But I'll admit, I'm a Travis fan. I've talked about him before on the pod. I'm very, very interested in him as an artist and a human being. He's an interesting guy. And this is a situation where he's actually going to get more hurt because of how he is. And to elaborate on that, Travis Scott and Kanye West are similar in that they are socially
polarizing.
abrasive.
Yeah.
Yes, they come by it honestly, and I think they both. I know Kanye's talked about it a lot. I think Travis has talked about it for himself as well. He's not this, Mr. Mayor of the room kind of guy. He's a fucking like, no, like boom, boom, boom. This is how we're gonna do it, and like he doesn't. The delivery is not the intended delivery on a lot of things. If people really want to understand who Travis Scott is, please, and this is gonna make a bigger point about this whole thing. Please watch his documentary. Look, Mom, I Believe I Can Fly on Netflix. It's fucking phenomenal. It is straight up. They had home cameras, video cameras, just following him around for like a year. That's it. Like there's no narrative. You just see what it is, and the reason that's also a part of a bigger argument is because we had talked some point today about the narratives of stories and how people change them. You saw immediately this entire hit campaign happen with all the attention going on social media,
definitely,
especially on TikTok, and they failed to show that this is like his festival. It's his Super Bowl. He puts it on in his hometown. They failed to show that he shut this thing down an hour and 11 minutes in. It was supposed to go about almost 2 hours. He shut it down because shit was going down because he finally got a hold of it. They also failed to show all the videos of him pointing out people in the crowd saying, I think someone's wrong. And they also fail to show the context that this shit happens. Now, people don't die like this at concerts because, again, the concert promoters set up a bad environment in the sense that it was far too packed in. They're going to get lawsuits, not even just from Tony Busby, and they're going to lose money, and they should.
Yeah.
And if, by the way, if Travis had any responsibility to that and personally ignored some of it, he has some liability too, and he'll have to take some responsibility for that. I don't think the intention was bad because he puts on a banger of a show. And not for nothing, bring it back to the documentary, Travis Scott is known as literally, he might be the best live performer on planet fucking Earth. His concerts are insane, and yes, and this is not his responsibility, people do roll on some serious fucking Molly and go out of their minds at these things, just like they do at EDM concerts and shit, where they're picking up people out of the crowd. So what was happening, minus the fact that he didn't know people were dying, credit, by the way, those kids who were trying to go to the concert people and scream there are people dying and they weren't listened to. That's where those people are going to get in trouble, and they should. Travis Scott didn't see from where he was anything different than what happens at his previous concerts. Go watch his documentary where he points out, whoa, we got man down right there. Get him. And, all right, cool, let's go.
And to add on to that, like, you got to understand. What you got to understand is that even with the people that tried to get the media people's attention, like, I'll say, and this is my headcanon, is just, you got to understand that, like...
Your headcanon.
Yeah.
I like that.
It's an anime term of, like, what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. But it's like, this is my headcanon. It's like, yo, you're working with Apple, and it's being streamed all over the world.
Yes.
So my thing is that Apple probably has an allotted budget for that. So now... when you also hire some of these people, I'm assuming they probably handpick these people, probably hire based off resume. I don't know, right? This is probably some of the biggest stuff of their careers, of their filming careers. So now my thing is that when they're doing that stuff, Apple is such a strict and like very strict company to the point where it's like, if something go wrong, let's say, for example, saying this hypothetically speaking, if something goes wrong and one of the cameras shut out and he's in charge of camera EF, whatever, whether or not he was trying to help somebody, he's losing his job. And what you have to understand is that looking back on it now, just even from a selfish perspective, some of these people are not valuing their jobs over those people that are dying or going to the hospital or passing out. I'm just going to keep it 100. Like,
wait, they're not what?
Some of those people who are working those jobs, some people have those biggest career, like those biggest points of their career.
In the moment, you're saying,
They're not risking their job and their livelihood for the rest of their life just because... they see
something they think is normal, by the way.
Yeah,
they're used to that.
Something they don't even know what's going on. You know what I mean? And so it's like, for them, it's like if you see somebody just climbing up and they know that you with a bunch of young kids, they're not gonna listen immediately. They're like, yo, y'all need to bounce. Like, I'm not dealing with that. You know what I mean? Because Apple is a very, very, very rigid company. I'm assuming that even if some shit was going down and they seen some people die, I'm assuming that even if they fucked up the camera, that dude's still getting fired, and that's the end of his livelihood. And you gotta understand, it's like when people are, and it goes back to what we're saying. This story has been interesting because it's like you're not putting in context for some of these people. Some of these people will probably never get this opportunity again if they F up. And it's like, I'm not saying these people are not important, but what I am saying is that a lot of these people are making it seem like they're the most selfish people in the world. But it's like, when you're given that opportunity to, a lot of these people would be selfish as well. And it's like you're blaming these people for doing what I think a lot of us would probably do. And that's why I just think that this whole thing is not fair to Travis, it's not fair to Drake. And I'm not saying this because I'm some celebrity apologist. It's just, like,
you're not.
Yeah, be honest and be accountable. Because what happens is that in a lot of cases, y'all do this shit happened, and now you trying to, let's say, for example, Timmy's mom dropped him off at Astroworld. This kid picks up Molly with his friends and he smokes weed and he drinks and he's under the age of 21. And now he comes back. Yeah. Travis Scott didn't do that. No. And now Timmy's mom is upset of that. And she's like, oh, well, if he never would have went to that Astroworld festival, he probably would have done that. No. He sits here and he drinks in his room every night. Like, how are you going to sit here and blame Travis Scott for the stuff that your son already had a habit of doing? Like, this stuff is a learned habit. When you're out and you partying, all that stuff that they're doing is a habit. So you can't blame somebody who also probably can't see past 10, 15 feet from where they're at when he has fire, when he has hella lights everywhere, to now say some shit that's going on in H36, 300 feet back, I'm liable for that. He can't be liable. And that's all I got to say on that.
Completely agree. The point you're making is essentially that society is constantly, especially in social media, therefore where the court of public opinion is, they're throwing stones from glass houses and acting like that person, I'm offended that person would ever have done that. I would never. Yeah, and no, basically. You probably fucking would have. There are a lot of people like you and me who do think, I think, the correct way and say like, well, no, realistically, not that they're not going to make an example out of him and lose some money and someone's going to get sued because someone has to be liable because people died. I understand that's how it works to an extent. But like we would at least be like, from a human standpoint, be like, okay, we understand how that could have happened and how we might have done it in that position. Yeah. Unfortunately, that's not what gets attention when people are tweeting. What gets attention is when people are like, fuck them, fry them, put them all through the court system, take them for all they're worth, fuck Travis Scott. Let's make video examples that we selectively edit of different artists in the past who have done this and not play the videos of Travis doing the same fucking thing in the past and stopping it. Let's take away all the context. And I'm not even saying, like, again, it's very clear the setup of the actual venue was poor in this one. Yeah. Someone's going to go down for that, and they should. Whoever was the company that set up a system where, I don't know if you saw it, but like people, I know concerts are packed in. You and I have been to them. But like this was like people were literally like their feet were off the ground because they were so stuffed. Yeah. And they also came out and said, well, Travis Scott and his team were warned about this at a time. They warn every person before every concert ever because it's like reading a Miranda right for these different cities and places that host it, just so they can say, we're not liable. Yeah. So that's not relevant. Exactly. And like, you know, we could go on about this all day, but it sounds like we're in complete agreement. I don't know what's going to happen with him, and I think, unfortunately, the world is now for a long time going to lose its best live performer, at least one of them. But which is sad to me, but also it's sad that people died. And hopefully, like, some of those things that are controllable at all these concerts, they actually take a lesson from this. And instead of just, like, frying Travis Scott for it, be like, hey, this has been a wider problem across music. Now let's fix it.
All I'll say is if a lot of these artists start doing concerts exclusively through Live Nation and Zoom, don't be surprised. And that's all I got to say on that.
Fair enough.
Yep.
Moose, that's a good place to end it, man.
Yeah.
We just did, I'll probably pick it up like 10, 15 minutes into when we were talking. I'll figure it out later, but we definitely did 3 hours. Okay. So, listen, I was basically holed up with COVID there for 2 weeks, and my schedule is now good, but it was like I had to cancel like 2 people and then move them around, and they couldn't do it. So thank you for coming in on short notice to get this out.
No doubt.
This week. I appreciate you, and it was actually, coincidentally, great timing, too, with everything going on. But thoroughly enjoyed doing it again, brother.
Yes.
We'll do it in the future.
Always.
And thank you.
No problem. Always.
All right, dude.
All right, bro.
I'll see you soon.
All right.
Everyone else, you know what it is. Give it a thought. Get back to me.